How to find meaning in the apocalypse today. I'll be telling you why. We're going to look at the meaning of life. Literally, that is what we're going to cover today. What is the meaning of life, particularly how young men can find meaning and purpose in life? I've spent 25 years or so researching this. There's going to be a major black pill, however, first, so I'll give you a warning of that. How to find meaning in life. That's literally what we're going to look at. No, it's not 42. I'm going to tell my personal story. There'll be a whole bunch of philosophical content. There's some really practical things, particularly at the end. I'm like, this is what you do. These are the exercises from years of searching that I found work when I've been coaching young guys on this. Going to recommend the best people in the field, and we're gonna end positively, but it ain't going to start that way. I'll tell you. Throb Club. This is going to be long. It's going to be a big, long one. Big seal clubbing. I love that joke. This is going to be a big one. The TikTok version is available soon. If you can't handle the girth, then get out. And I'd also say if you really want to put this into effect, it's like 100 hours of work. So this is going to be about an hour or so, but we're looking really at 100 hours of work. If you're like rock bottom, you're like life is pointless. What do I do? Then well, this is the video for you. People are like, seriously, what do you mean? Your meaning of life. You don't know the meaning of life. Who do you think you are? There's a certain sort of cynicism here, which I do understand. But yeah, really, yeah, I'm going to answer that question. This is easily the best guide to meaning and purpose you'll come across. I'm not very modest around this. I know it's because I've spent nearly 30 years on this topic, particularly for like young British guys. This will be fantastic. You just won't find anything better out there on the topic. I know there's a sort of cynicism around this, right? I don't mean like Diogenes, a punk philosopher cynic, but there's a cynicism around like, well, what is meaning and who are you and is it a cult? We'll see why. We're going to see why as the video goes on, why there is a cynicism around that. I do understand it. I'd also say it's a form of cowardice. Cynicism's the last defense of the ego, one of my spiritual teachers says. And it's a form of saying, it's a form of inauthenticity. It's a form of like, well, I'm scared to really ask this question, to imagine that there could find an answer. I don't have the answer, by the way, but I have ways that you can find answers for sure, like tried and tested. And it's a form of cowardice to just be cynical in the face of that possibility. This is the postmodern swamp, right? You see this in sort of Rick and Morty. Rick's got this sort of cynicism that there's no meaning, there's no point. And that is part of the condition we're going to look at. We're going to look at the problem before I'll offer you some solutions to this. So, yeah, fucking really. Here's a question, right? I've had this question my whole life for various reasons. I first seriously thought about this question when I was 13 years old. Do I end myself? And now I'd say no, don't. By the way, don't. Not until you watch this video and tried some of the things in it at the very least. But this is the question that we're really scared to ask. Like, what the hell is the point? Should I continue? If you've ever been there, say hi. Yeah, say hi. John Vervaeke's a big influence on this. He's a bit academic, a bit liberal, but his Meaning Crisis series is excellent. I studied that with a group of friends. It's like over 50 hours of content, plus we did at least 25 hours of discussing it at least. I've interviewed him multiple times. So he's a big influence. There's other influences. Ken Wilber, there's the buff one, Nietzsche. Jesse Crizzy, obviously, Christianity and Buddhism, both big influences on me. My mum, that's her, the nun, believe it or not. Yeah, yeah, my dad shagged the nun. Well, to be fair, she didn't go for her full life vows. She left the convent to go to university, and my dad showed her around. I can't beat that. I can't beat that. Camus there, who's related to my best mate. Peterson, of course, is an influence here. Yeah, I think he's sort of fathered a generation around a lot of this topic, and despite potentially being controlled opposition, despite I don't know who his boss is now, despite his nepotistic promotion of his talentless fucking daughter. Maybe that's mean, but I mean, we've still got a debt of gratitude to Mr. Peterson for bringing meaning back into culture in a big way and for, single parenting a whole generation of men. And that's my main mentor, Paul Linden, down there, bottom right, as an Aikido teacher and trauma worker. So these are some of the influences. This is a big deal for me. That's me, believe it or not, with the long hair, sensitive, poetic young man. And I certainly desperately needed me. I grew up in an alcoholic household. That family wasn't quite as happy as it might look there, though I got love for all the people in that picture. And by the time I was a teenager, I won't say what we were doing in that picture on the right, but you can look at us. You can make some educated guesses. Pretty criminal, pretty unhappy, pretty deranged at that point. Those people are all just about still with us, so I won't say any more than that. To and you fucking know who you are, lads. I don't want to incriminate you anymore. Um, yeah, who big influences on me? My cousin was called Jason Crowley. I haven't got a picture of him handy. I haven't got a picture of him on my computer because he sadly himself before computers and those sort of things were a thing. I've got some pictures I was going to take a photo of, running it around to her. Anyway, so Crowley, not Alistair Crowley, Jason Crowley, he himself. He was my hero growing up, and that made me think, God, what's if my hero is ending his own life? What's the point? Yeah, it really made me think. I was 13 years old. Kurt Cobain also ended his life when I was that age. He was my musical hero. And my best mate at university is a beautiful, lovely girl called Rachel. This is her on the right. She sadly also her life, jumped off Bristol suspension bridge not long after university. And she was really like a light of my life in terms of just, we were inseparable. And that really made me think. So by the time I was 20, 22, 23, I'd had these losses, and I thought, God, there must be something more. So I really looked into it. I'm 45 now. So yeah, some people talk about the meaning crisis, and I'm like, really not a big enough term. What we're seeing now in the world that it leads to these sort of individual tragedies, but sort of much bigger than the individuals is I call it a meaning fucking apocalypse. Is the lack of meaning in the world. In some ways, we've been heading this way for hundreds of years, but it's like the film The Hate, the French film. The guy's falling to the ground and he's saying, "So far, so good, so far, so good," but he's just fallen out of a 10th-story window. And I think we're hitting the ground now. And we've been saying so far, so good since 17th century, at least. So yeah, I've got a few different names for it. And the Fubar Sartre. Does that work? It fucking almost rhymes, doesn't it? There's a few names for this. I think we need a bigger name than the meaning crisis. Mean sounds lovely, doesn't it? Would you like a cup of tea with the meaning crisis? No, I'd like to fucking kill everyone. Yeah, so we need a bigger term for it. It is the fucking end of the world, maybe literally, sort of environmentally, or maybe it's the end of a way of being. Maybe what's going on that is so painful. We see so much drug addiction and suicide and all these things. Maybe it's the end of a way of being and it's needed. It's an evolution. It's one way of thinking about it. Perhaps it's a conspiracy. Who knows? There potentially are groups of people responsible. Look at my death cult video. Maybe it's being done to us rather than just sort of a natural evolution. Maybe it's an end of a world. That's one way of looking at it. I mean, obviously, this could be sort of environmental, could be an actual apocalypse. So when I talk about this is the meaning apocalypse. What I'm talking about here, the meaning crisis, is not just small things. If you're struggling to find meaning and purpose in the world today, it's not you, right? There's a whole thing going on. There's people who seem to want an actual apocalypse in the world. Please stop trying to start wars. Fuck's sake. But it's also apocalypse vibe. Like this film, The Road, it's bleak, man, cannibals, and there's no sunlight in it. And everyone, this is how the world feels. This is how things feel in our hearts right now. Yeah, I'm going to explain why. And obviously, this is in the context of sort of decadence. I've done Civil War videos, meaning in the context of this kind of real physical breakdown. We are seeing a breakdown, from little things like the rubbish not being collected in Birmingham to sort of big things like, the destruction of, the NHS just being destroyed, or the existential feeling just subtly that something isn't right. Yeah, we are seeing this societal breakdown. Who would have thought it? Some say that's just we're in a period of decadence, we're in a period of decline. You can look up Turchin or Alternative Hiss does stuff on this on YouTube. My friend Rudyard, God love him. Yes, so we could just say we're in a period of decline. And of course, when there are periods of decline, meaning things don't make sense. So, the Romans, various other cultures have had this throughout history. So why find meaning? You might say, why find meaning? Please excuse the Backstreet Boys again. I can't help myself. Well, you're going insane without meaning. You can stand anything as long as you've got a good enough why, to paraphrase someone. It's not just physical health. It gives you the reason to develop your physical health. It's directly physically healthy, but it gives you the reason to eat well and get to the gym. We'll see later, if you don't, you'll be very unhealthy if you self-medication. Women adore it too. Most of my audience are men, young men. Oh, I know. It's the moment I got purpose in life, I just immediately became attractive to way more and a higher quality of women. I do not, as someone on purpose now, I do not have a problem finding a partner. When I was young and much better looking, I did before I found purpose. So women are definitely like tuned into this, tuned in. And you'll get the respect of other men. There's a lot of other reasons why you would want to find meaning. What else are you going to fucking do? Okay. So it's hard now. In the past, if you were a blacksmith, your dad was a blacksmith, you'd be a blacksmith, right? My family were like Irish farmers. They all did that until my granddad, was a fisherman. He actually had the opportunity and he volunteered as an Irish volunteer in the Royal Navy in World War II because they needed people and he had those seafaring skills. But up until that point, we'd been, Irish peasants forever. Just there wasn't the supermarket of choice that we have now. And it's certainly the sort of confusion, decadent society of like, what does anything even mean anymore? What is a man? What is a woman? To quote Uncle Matt, no relation. Okay, so the condition we find ourselves in, we could call the desert of the modern, the desert of the modern. So the lack of meaning. Not the dessert of the modern, though that is a nice dessert I just had. Anyway, so Nietzsche was the one who first pointed to this. There's others previously, but in the modern times, he was ahead of the game. He said, God is dead and we have killed him. And that wasn't a celebration. He actually was saying everything is dead. The world has been stripped of meaning. The desert of the modern, they call it in the Matrix, yeah, which is a analogy, the sort of wasteland of the Matrix is an analogy here. Yeah, huge topic. I've done other features, the videos on Nietzsche, so you can see that. There's lots of good stuff on Nietzsche on YouTube. You can, different people looking. I wouldn't look up Peterson's versions, but there's better ones available on YouTube if you look around. But the idea is that nothing has any meaning. It's just stuff, right? Where does this come from? Human cultural history in 3 minutes. It's going to be fucking madder than Rudyard. Please be nice to this guy. Anyway, yeah, this is quick. 3 minutes doesn't impress anyone, does it? So let's see how quick we can go through human cultural history to explain the meaning crisis. So in the past, we were tribal people around the world. We were deeply enmeshed in an animist culture. 99.9% of your ancestors, so all of your genetics, more or less, were animist. The hills were alive with the sound of psychedelic music and mythos. The god, everything had a name, everything made sense. The people in the land won. Josh Schrei, name which means scream in German, has the most beautiful podcast. And if I've studied with him for a year, and his Emerald podcast is just gorgeous, a little hippie and left leaning at times, but just gorgeous, explaining this was our heritage. And one shouldn't idealize it, but the people in this world certainly had meaning. They might have also had fucking ringworm, but they had meaning. So this is what we are wired for, just evolutionarily, if nothing else. And yeah, this makes me laugh. Anyway, so what happened next? Civilization. Yeah, good thing, bad thing happened in various places. Obviously, the Greeks and the Romans in Europe, and various other places, China, India, various other places around the world. They came in, and this sort of animist vision was smashed. They're no longer kind of so in touch, perhaps, with nature, farming. This became a thing, but we're still in a trad worldview. Okay, so there's still a spiritual order, ideas of sort of individualism, progress, equality, all these nice sounding ideas that are actually disgusting, hadn't really come into being. There was a caste system, things made sense, whether it be in medieval Europe or India or wherever. There's a whole philosophy you can look at around the great chain of being or traditionalism. Mark Sedgwick, nice introduction, not too hardcore if you're more in the center. Had him on the podcast. Really good guy, really good introduction to the various thinkers involved. And sorry, it's not a very good graphic on the left, but the idea here is that there's an order to the universe. It all made sense. You'll see people sort of coming back to this, like this meme on the right. But you can't really go back. I'll come to why later. There's various people that speak by it. I mean, even King Charles is influenced by this. Yeah, Sargon is obviously Richard IV, I think, is one of the best ones on YouTube. His sense of traditionalism. Traditionalism here doesn't mean just like the 1950s. It means like way more radical than that. Evola, he wrote a book called Fascism Viewed from the Right, just to give you an idea. It was kind of like a mystical, aristocratic, super right kind of guy. Dugin, I have problems with his political theories because of my Ukraine involvements, but it's certainly very interesting as a philosopher. and one who is perhaps not coincidentally banned from Amazon. It's hard to get banned from Amazon. So yeah, this is well worth a look. This idea of traditionalism and what that means. So what happened? God, I'm almost out of my 3 minutes. So in the French Revolution, they were like, "Fuck this! We want to end traditionalist order." That is painted now as a good thing. So we said they afterwards they called it the Enlightenment. What a blag! Imagine saying, yeah, this is the Enlightenment. And before was the Dark Ages. It was all just peasants eating turnips in the mud, and all the peasants, sort of Marxist view where all the peasants were oppressed. And, there was definitely a element of that, but not always. And yeah, so this view of the Enlightenment has made everything great. It was all reason and rationality. And then we had the Industrial Revolution, and we thought we'd fuck it up some more. So industrial slaughter in World War One, of course, World War Two, right up to kind of techno feudalism of the sort of amount of times you're spied on in Britain, the Google who hide things from us, and of course the sort of hippie romanticism backlash, return to kind of mysticism and kind of a fantasy world of Eastern spirituality that didn't really make sense, and the complete breakdown of the good, the true, and the beautiful that is postmodernism. So after this kind of modernist era, starting in the 60s and really blossoming just the last 5, 10 years, the idea there is no such thing as goodness, there is no such thing as truth, and everything is ugly. Fuck. Yeah, we screwed the things up, right? So now we're all kind of like gay robots. Your kids are trans robots being forced to eat bugs, and we live in the pods, and we work for Uber, and we have to prostitute our daughters on only primes, and we're swiping on Tinder desperately trying to get a match, but we can't get one because the algorithm. Yeah, not good, not good. So this is the mini crisis. This is where we're at. And we could also say, yeah, but there's good things, right? Like we're on YouTube right now. I love YouTube. It's fantastic. And I've done this great podcast for the last 6 years. And I love my iPhone, and I love cappuccinos. And the French invented the blowjob and gave that to the world. And I've traveled all around the world on cheap flights, and I can chat GPT anything. I've got a hot Italian girlfriend, not an Irish peasant one. This is probably the end here because I just don't want to put my girlfriend's picture up, but just assume she's that hot. And dentistry. I like not being in pain all the time. So we're sort of in the best and worst times, right? Spiritually, we're in the worst times. Worst time to be alive, emotionally, spiritually, compared to our ancestors by far, emotionally, spiritually. But physically, the best time to be alive. So what I just described was the development of humanity through pre-modernism, traditionalism, we could call that, modernism, this progress and this logic and reason, and postmodernism, wibble, wobble, identify as an attack fucking helicopter. All right, took me a bit longer, 3 minutes. What's next? I'm going to tell you later. Okay, what comes after postmodern, well, metamodern or integral? I'll tell you what that means later on if you're new to that. This is not the end. This is an evolution that continues, thank God. So everything's got its dead. We're fucked. Yeah, rationality, materialism, the desacredization of the world, the what did Weber called it? It's like the demystifying of the world. Yeah, the disenchantment, we could call it. So the end of the good, the true, and the beautiful, even. Nothing's good. There's no right or wrong, man. It's my truth. And who are you to say that disgusting, that Crawley is ugly? I like Crawley. You're fucking wrong. It's ugly. How's that working out for you? How's that working out for you? As Tyler says on the plane. How's that? Rationality, materialism. How's that working out for you? Not very fucking well if you're watching this video, if you're thinking I've got the answers. Not very well for anyone. Okay, in terms of this breakdown of society, the breakdown of mental health, where the prison population stay in the States, the growth of the deaths of despair. We are, despite being materialistically wealthy, ending ourselves in record numbers, medicating ourselves in record numbers, mentally ill in record fucking numbers. Way, yay, go us. Yeah, like it's a cult, right? We keep saying it's working. It's a death cult that says nothing is beautiful, nothing is good. It's all just stuff. It's a fucking death cult. So I actually surveyed you guys, got a few hundred answers. Thanks for all those. I appreciate those who joined in those. I said all young men, anyone under 35. That's who I'm mostly aiming this video at. Old guys, please do spread it around. I said that there's no meaning. Yeah, nearly half of you said you don't have any meaning in your life. Some said yes, you did, and this is where it comes from. Family and community was a third, which is great to see. Very few of you found work as the answer. Yeah. Yeah, lack of meaning for so many people. By the way, I asked amongst liberal women who are not our audience, but the young liberal women, I do talk to that group still, despite their, piercings and attitudes, and going to cafes, and I meet a bisexual with depression. I talked to one the other day, and I live in a nice little British town, like a country town, quite a wealthy little country town for now. And I said, how many of your friends are on drugs? Looks about 25, 28. She said, oh, 80%. I said, how many of them are like actively diagnosed and medicated and being in treatment for? So not just self-diagnosed, mentally ill. She said, oh, three-quarters. And I've done that survey with a few young women. It's more or less what I'm getting as the answers. I know there's some data from the States you can look up as well if you're in America. Like over 50% of young liberal women and now have a mental health condition. It's absolutely shocking. So yeah, just from anecdotal as well as like if you look at the big stats, and also like in culture, right? Like I just watched this Mickey 17, is it? And this guy is this sort of depressed guy. He keeps getting printed out. He has bullshit jobs. He totally gets killed all the time. He's totally depressed. I mean, unlike reality, he's got two hot women arguing over him. But other than that, it's basically a portrayal of how a lot of young guy feels. I mean, Fight Club is one of the originals. By the way, I did a really good video on Fight Club before my channel took off. So go back and look at that. So it needs some love because it's a great video. You see, it's everything from cartoons, BoJack or Rick and Morty, even like what's his name's uh moody teen Dune boy. His portrayal of Paul Atreides is sort of like an angsty teenager, it's like teenage, this sort of angsty teenager. I mean, I get it, I've been there, I dyed my hair black, I painted maroon black, I've done, listened to Nirvana, I've done it all. But this seems to be just culture now, right? People that have nothing to live for, people that are despairing, in various ways. We just see this endemically. So yeah, I think there's a reason this video will be popular because a lot of people need it, sadly. And this is why I say there's lads, particularly young men, lost, lonely, anxious, addicted, despairing, and skint. They're all important, those things. The bigger picture here is what John Vervaeke calls domicide, right? So our countries are being killed, our nations are being destroyed, our homes are being destroyed, the aesthetics of our nations are being destroyed, the environments are. So I'm not a big greenie, but the rivers are disgusting and polluted in the UK, the seas too. The cultural, this sort of, you look at any town centre, it's disgusting. This begins actually with our own disembodiment, our own disconnection from the home of our being, our embodiment, our body, right up to the sort of national level of looking at conversations around mass migration and cultural influence. So domicide is a huge, huge thing, and no wonder people are struggling to find meaning. This is my answer, by the way, to domicide, which I'll come to later, which is the four reconnections model. But this is how most people think, sort of corporate life is just not satisfying. Who wants to die making Excel spreadsheets for Globocore, consume, work, buy, die? There's no meaning there. There's nothing. I remember going to the careers fair at the end of university, and I was told, yeah, you're graduating, 20 years old, just about to graduate. And there's all these different companies that had their stalls out, and I was supposed to want to get a job for one of them. And I went round, I actually left in tears. I just went, none of these are offering me anything. I mean, what money? I mean, I make money, I was doing dodgy stuff to make money, but it was like, what were they offering me? I actually spent the next 7 years traveling the world, doing odd jobs, working with kids, working in bars, working in ski resorts, just searching, going, there's got to be something more. And there was, so I've come to that. I didn't want to worship at the church of consumerism. It just seemed like a cult to me. I remember years, when I was a kid, I really wanted this toy, right? It was a micro machine. So it's like a city for cars, little cars. And I'd been wanting it for weeks. I told my parents, and I could not sure if they could afford it because it was quite expensive. But they got it for me for Christmas. I know they didn't have much money, but they got it for me. And I remember within 5 minutes, I was bored of it. And I actually remember thinking, I wanted this so badly because it was in this catalog, and I was like circling it in the catalog. And then when I got it, I just didn't want it. I thought, God, that's what it's like, isn't it? That's what materialism is like. The lies of materialism is stuff is all there is. Stuff will make you satisfied and it won't destroy society. They're the three lies of materialism. And what that leads to is nihilism. Nihilism, I can't fucking say. I don't know which is the right one. You tell me in the chat. There's one's American, I think. At least the nihilism. Narcissism, we just say, well, if there's only stuff, I must be the center of the universe. And it's so hard to deal with the suffering of life that we have to drug ourselves to deal with it. Narcoticism. So that, nihilism, narcissism, fragility, we don't have any robustness in this situation. Hedonism is how we try and cope. Cultural disconnection, nature disconnection, and disembodiment, which is bodily disconnection. So this is why no one has any meaning and everyone's down. These disconnections, basically. Yeah. Economics is a factor here. I pointed out before, and others have, that Homer Simpson's sort of economic model is now impossible for the average young person. It's completely impossible. It's not just that, though, because there's countries that are much poorer where people have meaning, but that's part of it. So this idea of materialism, consumer culture, that this stuff, whether it be there's various versions of this, right? This is sort of crude version of, like, the usual suspects rioting and breaking in and, but stealing a telly or whatever. But then there's more than that. It's like materialism, even of ideas, right? Like, oh, I've got to have the luxury ideas, and I've done the luxury travel, and even of spiritual culture. Like, I've done all the things. I've done the Vipassana retreat, and I've gone to Peru and done ayahuasca, and I've done all the yoga. It's all materialism. Okay. Objectification is the key thing here. We become objects, the world become objects. Nothing has any meaning because everything is just an object. Not what you've heard of, like sexual objectification. This is objectification in a way wider sense. It's the destruction of relationality. So Mary Harrington, a great British thinker, talks about this. It's the aloneness. We're alone together. We're alone in a tribe. We're alone in a crowd. Of course, we're alone, surrounded by other languages. I mean, I like a curry, but surrounded by other traditions. Notting Hill Carnival is a great way to be alone. It's not a way to connect, really. There's no people talk about this community, that community. It's all aloneness at this point. So materialism leads to a despair. We try and cope with that through pleasure, but as just neurologically, had Anna Lemke on my podcast, who authored Dopamine Nation, and she said, look, seeking pleasure leads to pain. It's as simple as that. Yeah, this leads to this feeling of being deracinated, uprooted, enfeebled. It just makes us weak. Hedonism and addiction makes us weak. I've been a drug addict, alcoholic. I can guarantee you that. It makes us agitated because we're not regulated by the co-regulation of the community, or the eco or the theo-regulation of spirituality, and ultimately despairing. Hedonism, Andrew Tate's an example of this, right? He's talking about his girls, and you think, it's just like, mate, you're in the exact same system. You pretend to be out of the matrix, but it's pure. It's just the second matrix. Absolutely in the matrix. This is it. I know it's this depressing. It's gonna get more. It's gonna get more fun in a bit, guys. Okay, it's gonna get more fun in a bit. So yeah, we're staring at consumer hedonism. It's the basis of our economic system at this point. The three poisons, a Buddhist model of what sends us insane, what leads to suffering in a Buddhist model. These are the three poisons, and that's the basis of our whole system. That's Facebook, that's Instagram, it's the YouTube comments section. And we put ego at the center of the world, not God. All right. So this is the alienated, dysregulated world. I call it the anti-culture. Yeah, and it's not subtle, is it? It's really not subtle. It's there to be seen. And is this fine? Is this okay? For me, it's really not. It's really not. What we've done with sexuality, what we've done with entertainment, music, it's an absolute desecration at this point. We are in a wasteland, and we might argue by who. We feel like zombies. We long for superheroes. Maybe it's the lizard people, or in the chat, there's always, oh, it's this group or that group. I'm talking about groups, and I'm like, well, maybe there's, look at my video on death cults for more on that. But it doesn't really matter in some sense for this purpose. We are in this environment of meaninglessness. That's you in the middle there, the unholy trinity. Yeah, and another factor here is narcissism. We become narcissistic. When we decenter God, we put ourselves at the center. We decenter tribe. What becomes the only thing in the center is oneself. Lash talked about this years ago. Great book, by the way, but others have written their whole careers on this. Just as a teacher, by the way, I run courses. It's an increasing problem on courses over the 20 years I've been teaching. People just can't be told what to do anymore. It's just, I'm the boss of me. It's childish. It's so childish. But a little bit of visual eye candy for you just to get you through the day, guys. I know I'm decadent. I know. So the good news is that people are waking up to this, right? The doomers are saying, "Hey, there's got to be more to life." They're saying, "Touch grass." They're saying, let's make something of our life. Let's pursue spirituality. The good news is you can't really keep life down. Yeah. Hope dies last, right? So Pandora, all these evil things come out of the box. That's mythology. And at the end of the box is hope. And I see that hope is still in people. And that is, Camus said it was a way to make us suffer more, but it's also just I think that's a very cynical interpretation. There's beauty left. There's a desire for life that will not die, which is so beautiful, so beautiful. Okay, so given all that, we might be thoroughly fucking depressed by now. You might be thinking, come on, Mark, get to the point. I think we need to set that up. So excuse me for being long-winded as ever. I know some of you struggle with that. TikTok's on the way. Um, what are some of the sources? Well, I'll tell a story. I might talk about myself in the third person, aren't I? It's fucking weird. Anyway, okay, who the fuck am I? I'm Ronnie Pickering. No, I'm not Ronnie Pickering. Let me tell you a story about myself that I think's illustrative. So my own story, in and of itself, is not particularly interesting, but it is illustrative of a few points, and we learn through story. I promise you, I'll be getting like practical, do this, this, and this lists at the end. So my own life story is I'm an immigrant, right? So my family are Irish immigrants. There was a sense of disconnect. I wasn't from the place I grew up in. I was born in Liverpool, and then I grew up in East Anglia, which is sort of the Alabama of England. If everyone's cousins and has six fingers. So yeah, if you're from there, shout out to my femboys. I have lost the accent, but that's where I grew up, and I wasn't really from there. So there's that disconnect. For me, first one of the first places I found meaning was martial arts. I remember the structure and the beauty of it. This is Sheehan William Smith, OBE, rest in peace. His son and Gordon Jones and others at the dojo in the West Midlands were very, very good to me. And I first started at university doing Aikido because it just made more sense than psychology. This psychology from books didn't really seem to be helping me, but martial arts seemed to give me some sense of meaning. If nothing else, it helped me regulate myself to get my shit together so I could, eventually give up drugs and alcohol, which I was thoroughly addicted to by that point. I ended up working in areas of conflict. I was trying to self-initiate in various places, getting involved with Ukraine work, doing stuff with that, marrying someone from there. That's my ex-wife, Daria. She's lovely, and we are amicably divorcing. She's a good woman, good woman. Doesn't always work out with marriage, but it's nice when there's no hatred, huh? And yeah, the day before my wedding day, I was like helping soldiers in Ukraine way before the full scale invasion. I've also for years been teaching workshops, something called Purpose Black Belt, helping young men do this. More recently, taking young guys to the gym, just wrote a book on this. If you want a copy, find me on X. And on my podcast, I've had hundreds of people on the podcast talking about this topic. So I've really studied it. And in my own life, one of the first sense of purpose I ever got, I did this project with the United Nations on the Green Line. So that's the sort of no man's land between North and South, Turkish occupied and Greek Cyprus. In the comments, that'll be fun. And even describing it will make it fun. It's kind of like bombed out no man's land in the middle. It's a peace building project with Israelis and Palestinians and Americans and Iraqis. Really interesting project using martial arts and trauma work. I won't go into all the details, but it was the first time in my life I felt a sense of I'm in the right place. There was a distinct moment. I was the sort of just gopher, made myself useful to the people who are smarter than me running it. Various smart people running it. And I just said, look, I've got time. I'll live out of a bag. I'll live cheaply and I'll help you out. So I was like the runner, you could say, right? Gopher. And I remember I was given the job of getting everyone across from one side of the green line to the other. And it's quite a tricky thing to do. And I'd worked it all out and I'd done the work and I led this group of people, like literally at the front of like 100 people. And I thought it could go horribly wrong, but I just had this profound sense of rightness, like round peg, round hole. I've always felt out of place, right? I just had this sense of, oh, I'm doing God's work. I'm doing my work. I'm doing what I was here to do. It was beautiful. And I really chased that feeling for years afterwards because that's the first time I ever felt it. And I write about this in my book, but shivers up my spine now just thinking about it. Right place, right time. Same thing when I did the Ukraine work. I was on the ground 3 weeks into the full scale invasion. Every picture of me, even like in bomb shelters, and I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm overworked. I mean, despite being surrounded by beautiful women, it wasn't that hard. I don't want to overstate this. I wasn't like on the front lines in Bakhmut or something, but yeah, to me, that experience was a sense of like I was made for this. Right. I remember speaking to my friend Alex beforehand. He was like, Mark, this is a job for you. You know the people, they got the contacts, you've got the skills. And the project I did there, I'll be proud of to the day I die, But that was after many, many years of finding purpose and getting better at finding purpose. So as soon as the war started, I was like, I've got a job to do here. And I'm very happy with what we did. Equally, just book I wrote. So I just wrote a book for young men on this topic, and literally I was woken up every day at 5 a.m. to write the book until it was done. I didn't like my girlfriend was like, "What are you doing? She'd be rolling over." I didn't need an alarm clock. I just wake up and go, right, I have to write. And it would be like a sense of being compelled. The muse, an artist would say, right? The muse was there. And I wrote the book, and it's dividing opinions so far, but I'm pretty happy with it. So whether this be a project, whether this be like how driven I was to go to Aikido when I was young, and I almost never missed an Aikido class at university, despite being a full-blown alcoholic drug addict at the time. It was like, it's just incredible because it was that strong calling was there, and you get better at that. You get better at following it. So for me with the book, it was just obvious. I know what to say to my girlfriend. I know how to prioritize the rest of my life. So during the Ukraine project, I let my business go, for example. Now I know not to do that. You do get more mature with this. So as I said, I've really worked with a lot of people on this all over the world. And what I'm sharing with you is sort of best practice from that. So it's my opinion, but it's also a bit more than that. Yeah. What's your story? Tell me in the chat. I am telling you this because I want algorithm comments, but also like genuinely, like how did you find purpose? Older men who have found purpose. I think it's so useful for the younger guys to hear different stories. Yeah. In the chat, if you're a younger guy, now we're going to start giving some practical ideas. You might want to get a notepad. Key thing here is you actually fucking do some of these. It's not like I've just gathered the ideas for you. You have to go right, which even just one or two of them. Yeah, so grab a notepad if you need to. Okay, let's start off with self-authoring. I always think for young guys, best thing is get them in the gym. It gives them the really just physiologically, it's helpful. Gives them an internal locus of control. Like I can control my life. I can literally build my own body. Yeah, I have agency. I'm pushing something away from me, or pulling something towards me, or picking something up physiologically, embodiment wise, psychologically, it all goes together. It gives someone an internal locus of control. So self-authoring, Peterson talks about this through sort of narrative and story. He's got some great exercises there. His self-authoring is a nice place to start. We are autopoetic. Is that a word? Autopoiesis is the word. We create ourselves. And that is the beginning point. If someone's in sort of victim mindset, victim embodiment, victim collapse in their whole physiology, it's not going to help. So if you want to find meaning and purpose, get to the fucking gym. There's alternatives, body weight, martial arts, etc. Maybe yoga. But there's where I would start most people is just let's start with the physiology and then the rest follows. Yeah. All right. That might be your takeaway from this whole video. Just gonna check we're still recording and we're all good. How we doing? What's going on? Yeah, I think we're all good. All right. Okay. Oh, how do I get rid of that? Excuse me. All right. Where was I? Hopefully we're still going. Yeah, so this is my model of what it takes to find meaning. It takes 4 reconnections. The first one is you have to have some kind of higher or inner power right in the middle. Make something else the center of your life. This is the idea of service, the idea of mysticism, experientially, the idea of religion, more organizationally. There's various aspects to this, but you need something at the middle of your life that isn't you. As my AA sponsor said, anything can be your higher power mark as long as it's not fucking you, mate. Self-regulation and embodiment, absolutely key. This is the radar. I'll come to that. Connecting to community. This is not a solo exercise, despite the individualism of our culture. Connecting to place, ecology, misspelt there, excuse me. And divinity runs through all of this. It's around the outs, like a pomegranate. It's through the out skin, it's the middle, it's the pith, it's the whole thing. Yeah. So this model is our tetrarchy model, 4 reconnections, rule of 4. This is a sort of overriding model that you can study. Sometimes I do like little exercise with it. If you want to do what we want now, you can feel your body. Yeah, connect to your body, even to your breath. Think of someone who makes you smile. Maybe imagine your ancestors' hands on your back. Look at the sky. Look at any plants that are around. Take a breath of nature. And ask yourself, what am I in service to? What is my bigger why? Notice we just did that as a technique, as a process, not just as a philosophy. Do that 5 times a day. Scans, I call that. You can also do an audit for these. You might want to just pause it and mark yourself out of 10. Like, how do am I at self-connection? How it's community, ecology, divinity? How do I score on those? That's a spelling mistake. Sorry about that. Okay, how do I score on those things? Yeah, this is old. We use with people. So it's worth self-assessing because usually some are better than others. I've found community is often the worst one. Community, that's how I used to speak. Okay. Here's another key one, another one of John Vervaeke's ones. What do you want to do before you die? You've heard that in Fight Club. It's human sacrifice, right? What do you want to survive after you? You ask most parents this, and they'd want their kids to survive over them. Might be your work. What's your attempt at immortality? It's interesting, we this idea of dying for something. It seems old-fashioned now, but this was the King of Belgium who was literally fighting on the front lines in World War One. It's just over 100 years ago, 110 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. And this is very different than the sort of matriarchal protect people at all costs that we saw during COVID, the domineering, smothering mother. It's disgusting, that picture, isn't it? It's like the idea of being mothered forever. That's the sort of nanny state. That's communism. That's the control state we see. If you won't die for anything, you won't live for anything, right? So this is why, in my videos on civil war, I say the most religious side will win, the most spiritually motivated will win. We see this with the Taliban or the Viet Cong or whoever. It's one of the most important factors. I see this when I've been working in Ukraine. By the way, Ukraine has better mental health than the UK. The statistics on mental health in the Ukraine are better than the UK, despite the fact that people are at war. Why? Because they have whatever your views on the war. And I know it's fashionable for people to take a Russian side on the right now, which is bizarre to me. A lot of propaganda there. But whatever your views, people are, their country's invaded. They have a strong sense of identity, of nationalism, of language. It's a really big thing for people there. There's like togetherness. They have a sense of survival, and that's a sense of purpose. So it goes a long way for people, is my experience. Yeah, so what would you die for? Maybe put that in the chat, huh? What would you die for? Because whatever you would die for is a reason for live. Achilles says, in the film Troy, these little kids like, I'd be scared to fight that guy, and he says, that's why no one will remember your name. Yeah, because they're talking about glory. For you, it might be religion, nationhood. For a lot of people, it's family. What is your reason to live and die? We gotta have that. Gotta find that. As I mentioned earlier, like having some kind of higher or inner power. I always say like can be kind of agnostic about this. Source works for a lot of people. If God's too scary a word, some of my hippie friends are like it's the universe, and I'm like that's just another word for God, but fine, okay. Love for some people. There's some problems with that I'll come into later, but you just got to find something. That's what we find in 12 step in AA and NA and groups like that. Is you need something. You can't have nothing. You just can't cope with nothing. We need some source of higher power. And I'd say like try it. Like if you're watching this, you don't have any meaning in your life. What have you got to lose? Like by meditating every day or praying every day. You might feel silly because there's a sort of cynicism, particularly a sort of British David Brent style skepticism. We're so cool, aren't we? We're so cool. And that postmodern cynicism is part of the problem. Yeah. Can you actually pray? What have you got to fucking lose? Assuming I'm not trying to sign you up for a cult, right? I'm not going to pay you any money. You can go in the local church and pray. You can meditate for free. Okay, what about work? So most people feel like they've got bullshit jobs, as David Graeber's book is on. The Akagi thing is very popular. It's actually wrong. It actually only needs three things. So people will pay for what they need. That's the essence of capitalism at its best. When people are in service to something, when it's serving people, people will pay for that, or someone else will pay for it via a charity. Passion's great, but it can't just be passion. It's like, oh, I really love eating chocolate. Yeah, but that's not in service to anyone. And you do need to be good at it. So I'm going to flesh this out over the next 10, 20 minutes. But this is, this is a classic for a reason, this Sakagi thing. Just giving it a special spiritual Japanese name is obviously, makes it better. Let me ask this: people that built the cathedrals of and churches of Europe, do you think they just did it as a job? No, there was some sense of the spiritual, of the divine in there. When I teach, this is the same. There's some sense I'm in service. Of course, I'm self-amusing. I get paid maybe for it. The pennies from YouTube is barely worth it. This could be a plumber. You're in service. I saw a plumber. I said, it must be nice being you because you look quite happy. He said, yeah. He says, I don't really like being under sinks and it's all pretty skanky. But he said, fixing toilets. He said, but every time I come to people's house, they're pleased to see me. I nearly always fix their problem and then they thank me. I was like, that's a nice fucking job. You don't always have that when you're working in information tech or whatever. Yeah, I went through a stage of burnout and depression, and what I noticed is as soon as I would go to work, it was like Yoda, with his stick, and I'd go and fight, and I'd be fine, and I'd be totally engaged because I wasn't thinking about myself. I was engaged with my audience and what do they need and what do my students need, and that was like the happiest part of my day for that hour or two when I was teaching. And it was like a miracle. I'd sort of wouldn't feel like I couldn't teach, and I'd teach, and I'd have all my attention on them. Gave myself a break. I was worried about money. I was worried about my marriage, all this stuff. It's a fucking break, if nothing else. Being of service to other people is a total break. And I'd say, despite Hormozy's hustle culture nonsense, my Irish ancestors didn't have the opportunities I have. I was thinking about like, let's say the podcast, right? I speak to really like this guy, Joe Lombardo, who's a cool academic. He studied philosophy of strength. It's just fascinating. I wouldn't even know this guy in the past. Now I can talk, I can get the time of like world-class people, professors from Stanford and millionaires. And, I spoke to yesterday, I spoke to like a friend of, what, I shouldn't say, but someone well known, right? There's just opportunities in the modern world. If you're exceptional, if you're willing to work hard, I'd say the entrepreneurial route isn't for everyone though. Um, we are in this difficult economic time, and I do want to acknowledge that it's not like, oh, just work harder, fucking boomer nonsense. You do have to sacrifice, and there is a survivorship bias with people like me who have done well. There is this idea. See the bottom right, there's that plane. They were looking at where to put the armor on a plane. So they said, where are the holes in the plane? And they had the holes in the planes that made it back. The holes that were put in the engines and the cockpit, they all didn't make it back. Yeah. So there's a survivorship bias here in people like me. What I've seen though is you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot, prepared to have like very few friends or girlfriends. And I lived in a house that smelled of cat piss on and ate noodles for years to set up my business. Okay, because I didn't have the family money. You have to be conscientious. You have to be able to work hard. You have to have high trait openness and high IQ and high conscientiousness, and be willing to sacrifice this. If you're willing to do that, there is a lot of doors open still as well. Say, you don't have to, if you're willing to do that and you've got those skills, you don't have to settle for a bullshit job. What I would say is it's tough and it's not necessarily easier, but it is available if you want it. And I don't want to, make it sound like it's easy for everyone because it just isn't, particularly in the economic times we're in. All right. Whew, still with me? Take a breath. You need embodiment to find purpose. What do I mean by that? Embodiment is a subjective study of the body awareness, the body base. It's like your radar. Yeah. So there's a couple of versions of this, right? It's what makes you come alive. Sometimes it's like deep calm. Often it's just what gives you energy, what gets you up at 5 a.m., like in the case, right? Like today is Saturday. My girlfriend's waiting downstairs to cook me lunch. Steak is awaiting. Okay. Hot Italian with a steak waiting for me. I'd rather be doing this. And I texted her. I said, look, I just got to finish this, about an hour ago. Anyway, so yeah, what you've got energy for, what you would do for free, what you can do all day, what you can do sustainably. I can teach all day. I can teach for 12 hours and I don't even get tired. It's just completely easy for me. What is really easy for you that's hard for other people is a good coaching question for purpose. There's more. You've got to differentiate stuff that's fun, because stuff can be like computer games, for example, can be really fun, but that's not actually purpose, not really in service to anyone else. The same even with like flow states. I had Stephen Kotler on the podcast. He's great and speaks about flow states. And I said, look, you like skiing and all that, and it's really exciting, but it doesn't really help anyone else, right? It's just the flow state. Maybe you take that into helping someone else, but I think that's a blag. So yeah, the flow state stuff's interesting, but it has to be of service. It has to be what I'd call delight. So can you differentiate the fun? It's like sweet food, right? Or you're on Tinder, it's exciting, it's a buzz, but it's an addictive buzz. It's grasping in Buddhist sense, tanha in Pali, versus flow, which is deeper, yeah, which is full engagement, timelessness. You can read Mixel Csikszentmihalyi. Check the fucking pronunciation. Yeah, his work is good, but I'd say there's another word that I would call delight or lighting up, and there's sometimes an ease to that, not just an excitement. Yeah, it's like the comfortable feeling of being with a girl you can just chill with, right? That ease, round peg, round hole kind of feeling that I had in Cyprus. So this is a bodily thing. It's a skill to notice and get good at this. Yeah, other people will tell you they're like, "Oh, you did well that session. Now you seem really alive that session." Like I've got a team that host me when I teach. They host the calls, and yeah, that is part of it. Okay, Woo. How are we doing? All right. Good, good, good. So let's go back to this. So you need boundaries to find purpose. Why? Because otherwise you live other people's lives. I've got like British Asian mates who are dentists because their dad wanted them to be. 20 years later, they're like, I don't even like looking in people's mouths. It's a gross job. They don't even like it. What the fuck? Right? So you purpose is actually about telling people to bugger off. It's about me saying to my girlfriend, we'll go out this afternoon, not right now. I'll see you later. Yeah, it's like I sent her a message like, I need 2 hours on my own. Please, she's like, oh, I want to. Women will always do that, by the way. Women think they want to be the number one in your life, but they actually only respect you if they're the number two. You need to put your purpose above. Women, David Data said that. In my experience, is true. Okay. Healthy contempt for the world is also necessary, right? Again, Tate is fucking like, it's very materialistic. Gotta have the cars, gotta get the girls. No, you've got to have contempt for power, for status, for money. Of course, I like all those things. I like the fact that I go to an embodiment conference. People are like, oh, you're Mark Walsh, you wrote that book. I have status in my own little pathetic world. I have enough money. I'm in the top 5 or 10% tax earners in the UK. I have enough money. Yeah. Buy us a nice dinner tonight. Um, but you've got to have a certain contempt for these things. This is, from a Christian model, what Satan tempts Jesus with, right? These are the world. The world is the devil's domain, right? In the Christian model, it's what you're tempted with. The worldly wins in Buddhism, if you prefer. So let's talk about death. If we're not going to be of the world, memento mori may be helpful, right? Stoics talked about this, the various versions. If we contemplate our death, it brings perspective to life. You probably shouldn't do this if you're recently bereaved or if you're currently very depressed. My experience, it can be hard the first couple of times, and it gets joyful, actually. There's different ways to do this. Like in India, I watched the bodies being burned in Varanasi as a death meditation for you as well. Seeing someone go from a body to nothing. Yeah. Also, I remember I was in Varanasi. I was walking along the riverside, and then a dead baby washes up on the river because they don't burn the babies. And I was like, "Fuck, this is a death meditation. Could have done without that." Another thing, a leper like reached out and touched me. I was like, "Shit." There's lots of ways to do death meditation. The samurai used to imagine all the ways you can die today. Like right now, this house could collapse. I could get car crash. I could be poisoned by my girlfriend who's angry that I'm working. Yeah, of course. Every time you look at crucifix, right? Yeah, died in our name, right? I like to sit in graveyards. Sit in graveyard every day. This Tibetan death meditation. You imagine your body decomposing. I've got put Mark Walsh death meditation on YouTube. Work in a hospice, maybe. These are all potential. There's others. Maybe put your favorites in the chat, but these bring perspective. It's like what really matters. My mum had cancer, and for a couple of years after, she was like the Zen master. Nothing bothered her, man. She was so chill. It's like what really matters. The same with the Ukraine stuff I've done. It just gives me perspective. You stop sweating the small stuff, and it helps you tune in to what really matters. That's the question, right? Yeah, it's funny. I just watched this Carol at the End of the World. My girlfriend makes me watch these bizarre films, and she's like this sort of normal woman, and the world's ending in this series, and everyone else is doing like mad hedonistic stuff. Like her parents are in this like crazy threesome with their carer, and everyone else is like, "Woo, carpe diem, seize the day," and like they're just going off. It's actually a damning indictment of American culture because it shows the sort of shallow hedonism of America that comes out. And she just wants to be normal. She works in an office to get away from it, which is what people are doing, right? Trying to get away from that fear of death. It's a very obvious but good metaphor in the series that she ends up working in an office to not think about death. Yeah, that's what most people do. They distract themselves somehow with hedonism or just work, busyness. We all have cancer. You will literally have cancer cells in you right now. Or I just licked my finger, right? I just ate several bacteria that are potentially dangerous, potentially going to kill me every time I do that. Okay. Aging is almost like cancer. You're programmed to self-destruct. So it's like, it's the end of the world for all of us, right? Right now, the world is ending. You're not going to be here in 100 years. It's like, come on, wake up. Yeah. What did you want to do, Raymond? What did you want to do? Hence that scene. There's other variations to look at. I'll come back to death, but there's other ways to look at purpose, like Viveki and Peterson, almost look at like cognitive science in terms of cognitive science, behaviorally. It's like you do have a purpose. It's what directs your actions. You do have a value hierarchy because otherwise you wouldn't even be able to see, let alone they wake up in the morning. What do I do today? So one way of looking at this sort of agnostically is that which is your highest value, that which directs your priorities and action. It's a very sort of scientific definition if all this sort of mystical death stuff's too much for you. Okay, so very common way to look at purpose. You'll see this in a lot of the American literature because it comes essentially from Christianity via Aristotle, is the idea that you're teleologically, you have a purpose. You're here for a reason. The Blues Brothers were on a mission from God. Good film. This is good. This is good. This is good. I often have that feeling myself, like I'm on a mission from God or the gods, if you prefer. The universe is aligned, it's conspired. What has the universe conspired to get me to do? That is a good question. If you're a conspiracy theorist, see your life as a conspiracy. Problems with this is that sometimes people do awful things when they are on the mission from God. They get fundamentalist. It's not always helpful. You see that with more religious brothers. You see that with our Muslim cousins. Okay, certainly some of the Orthodox bros. So it's a bit dangerous, but there's truth to it. Right, what am I here to do? And if you think, I don't know, nothing has a point, if you're still in that sort of nihilistic kind of worldview that we're conditioned into in modernity, as described earlier, you can be agnostic about it. You can say, maybe I have a perfect. I'm going to act as if I have a purpose. It seems like I was designed for that work in Ukraine. Perfectly good narrative, so you don't have to go to be fundamentalist. What am I here for? Yeah, you can ask yourself that question. Ask yourself that every day. Again, you can have someone almost like interrogate you. I've done this with students. What's the point in you? What are you here for? What's the point in you? There's one meditation school that does that for 7 days at a time. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you? And you cry and you get angry and you go through a whole process. Steve Pavlina says you can just do this writing down. Just write down my purpose is, and then just keep writing until you cry. Keep writing until you go through that. Spend a day doing that. If you're like, oh, if I can't find my purpose, it's like, okay, get off Netflix, spend a fucking day doing that. Yeah, with a friend, in a written form, or just every day, once a day, just asking yourself that question. Go for a walk in nature, asking yourself that question. So such a gentle way to do it, but there's more hardcore ways if you want to, brutalize your friends. Follow your piss, Steve Levy. Other people have said this as well as Steve, but what makes you angry? Right? Like, let's say you walk past a homeless person, right? Most people go, oh, whatever, maybe give him a quid. But if that really makes you angry, if that breaks your heart with sadness or rage comes through, maybe that's the work you were here to do, right? Like if I see like bad embodiment training, this is my main profession. I'm an embodiment teacher, it's kind of like mindfulness. If I see bad embodiment training, I'm rageful. I'm like offended by that. Yeah. But other things, not so much. So sometimes that is a useful emotion to point us to passionate caring. Yeah. Equally with trauma, I've done whole courses on this. People's like deepest wounds often become their work. So a lot of my wounds I described when I was a teenager about my cousin and my best mate Rachel and stuff. That's now my work. Now, we should teach from our scars, not our wounds. You don't want to do that too quickly. It was quite a long time ago I went through a grief process for those two people. I can speak about it now without, big grief. And I shouldn't be speaking to a therapist now. It's fine. But with time, your coping mechanisms can become your best skills. Like trauma makes you feel existentially threatened, either because you are or you just feel like it. And as a result, you get really, really good at something. Okay, much better than everyone else because to you, it's a survival need, right? It's like, the only way I can cope is by being funny. So you become the funniest person ever. Or the only way I can cope is by being really empathic. So you become the best listener ever. Then you become a great counselor when you're older. Do you see what I mean? So this is trauma superpowers. We all have these, like mine, around teaching because I had a horrible school. It really was rough for me. Deepest wounds. Yeah, deepest wounds are there. So often that's where the gold is. And we do need to do some trauma work to get out of being stuck in fight or flight, which is just survival rather than growth. There's not really much contribution when you're in fight or flight, to a place where you can take those wounds into contribution to others. We are not, shit, I've got to survive and everything's in scarcity. Yeah, so do the fucking work with trauma, EMDR, somatic experiencing, TRE. There are modalities out there. Ask me in the chat if you want more. Okay, here's some classic coaching techniques. What if today was the last day of your life? Would you be doing the right thing? Yes, I would. I would be fucking going for a drive with my girlfriend. I'd be making this video. If this was the last day of my life, I would still make this video. Here's another version of that. I can wave a magic wand. There's a classic coaching one for purpose. What's the perfect day look like for you? What are you doing? Okay, maybe, first of all, you go for a holiday, you sit on a beach, that's good for about a week or two, right? In my experience, a week's holiday, and I went to, where did I go? Where was it? Antigua. It's fucking nice. Week of eating lobster and sitting on the beach. After about a week, I was like, I kind of want to do something. It's about a week. That's all it takes. So after that week, what would you do? You won the lottery is another way of saying this, right? What's your perfect day look like? And then, we're realistic, so we've got to gradually transition it. My days now, mostly things that I love, mostly things that I'm good at, things that I really enjoy, and things that I can get paid for. There's always a real world kind of balancing of that. What do you want written on your gravestone? 5 words. What's it going to say? If it says teacher on mine, I'd be very fucking happy. Very happy. That's in my family heritage as well. My grandmother was a teacher. My dad ended up being a teacher. My mum was a teacher. It's in the blood, but it's also just like, it's who I am at this point. You've got to be careful with that, right? Because I've got a friend who's a doctor and he doesn't like it. He hates it. Doesn't like it. Doesn't like the NHS. Doesn't like his job. He's tried different types of stuff. Just doesn't like it. But he's attached to the status of being called, let's call him John. He's not called John, but Dr. John. Yeah, you know who you are, Dr. John. He's too attached to that fucking word. Got to be careful. But what do you want written on your gravestone? Magic wand. What if this was the last day of your life? They are good coaching questions. If you're stuck for purpose, pause. Think about them now. Okay, what about if you're just young and you have no idea? Well, you need some life experience, right? You got all this choice, but it's too much. So here's what I would recommend. Travel. Okay, so not sitting on a beach in Thailand. You don't have to be rich. You can work in bars. In fact, it's better if you're engaged with other people. I did ski resort work. I did Camp America. You don't necessarily need money for a lot of it. I live poor and you can travel cheap in Europe, certainly. I just talked to I got drunk with a lot of interesting people. Now the drinking eventually had to stop, but I really chatted to people in youth hostels and bars and doing different kinds of jobs. I'd be on a ski resort talking to millionaires on the fucking ski lift, it was mad, right? And I talked to the nannies who were looking after the babies, and I talked to the guy in the laundry, I talked to the guy in the hotel who was a Swiss guy, and I was learning about different cultures. Fantastic. If you're under 30, I wouldn't worry about the meaning of your life purpose too much. I'd say just fucking have an interesting life. Try and do different jobs. Even today, I got offered a job with how much can I say? Some very interesting people in the military, let's say, recently. And I thought, you know what, I'm probably going to take that job just because I want to know what their world is like. These people have a very different universe to me. I fucking want to know. I want to know. Anyway, I gotta move on. So yeah, do that. And it's like that thing from Aliens. Have you seen it? It's like beep, 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 beep. It's like a movement tracker. You tune in over time. I know this is annoying if you're young and you're just like, look, I just want to know now because it's breaking my heart. I know I was in the wasteland for like 7 years myself after university. I was so happy when I found it, but it took a tuning in. At first, I was like, oh, it's Aikido. It's like martial arts. And I was like, oh, it's not just Aikido because there's other martial arts. I actually quite like dancing and meditating. And gradually, I was like, yeah, but I want to work with the body and I want to work with people. And I'm kind of a teacher and I'm good with kids, but I don't think it's kids. It's just the teaching part. And gradually, I got to where I am now, where I wake up and I go, I can't fucking believe I'm being paid for this. Like, I'm getting paid to make YouTube videos. It's fucking ridiculous. I know it's annoying if you're young. Yeah. Get that body radar. The sooner you get it and the more life experience you sort of throw in there to learn from, the better. Okay, there's a few recommendations if you want reading. It's more about the experience and the practice, but Man Social Media, Victor Frankl, classic. Obviously, we've got Peterson there. Mark Manson, he's a sort of chubby, postmodern cynic. I'd like to fight him, but he's a good fucking writer, let's be honest. Bronze Age Mindset, or you want to go a bit more wild. Pressfield's great. His War of Art's great. Just reading Jack Donovan's Way of Men's got some good stuff in it. David Data, obviously, you'd cover the front cover of that on the train so people don't think you're better than them, even if you are. Equality's a lie, guys. And then the classics, shout out to my Indian editor. You know who you are. Fucking do what Krishna tells you, man. You're on the chariot. There's a war happening. Can't go wrong with some of these classics. And, if you haven't read the Bible and some of that stuff, like Peterson's lectures on it, it's just well worth it, even if you're atheist. Well worth it. It's a classic for a reason. Yeah. Another question. I'm lost. I can't find purpose. Okay, well, let's stop the things that kill purpose. Let's take the social media off your phone. Let's that hub you keep going on late at night. That is not helping. Okay, the weed, which is it's kind of a herb, it's just weed, man. No, totally demotivating. Maybe you're spending too much time alone. Maybe you need to spend more time alone. That's a tricky one. That I know that entertainment, advertising, gaming, these things are horrible for finding purpose. You give up all entertainment for a week, you'll go nuts. Number one. Number two, you'll find purpose. 1 week. 1 week. Disembodiment is obviously a big one. So getting in your body, I've already mentioned, is a big start to that. The social media companies are not your friends. They're trying to keep you in a state that's good for their advertising, that's bad for you to find purpose. All right. So maybe right now, make a little note. 3 things to give up if you want. Like if you come to me and say, like, yeah, I use porn, I game 5 hours a day, and I'm on social media 2 hours a day, and I can't find purpose. I'm like, well, fucking, what do you expect, mate? What do you expect? So sometimes we have to help people put the weed down or the gaming down first. I'm not saying these things are always bad. Like, I use social media sometimes. Mostly I get my team to because it's too toxic, but that's a luxury. Gaming, I've had times in my life where I played a computer game for a bit, but it never became a big thing. Yeah. These are the things, the dunce, the 3Ds. You love the D, don't you? You love the D, kids. Distraction, demotivation, and numbing. Dumbing. I just put a D on it because it works better that way. So just ask yourself, do these things distract you? Like most entertainment, it's just distraction from your lack of fucking meaning. Demotivate you, like fapping off fucking usually does, right? Like, even in a relationship, sometimes I'm like, let's just hold it until I've done that work. Yeah, that's right now. Numbing, what numbs you out? So you miss that body radar. Yeah. Yeah, man can't feel mean and they numb themselves with pleasure. That is a good meme. Fucking love Trad West. Trad West, if you're out there, just fucking say hi. Fucking love your stuff. Next one. Still with me? This is big, huh? But it's meaning your life. So what do you expect? Fucking TikTok. All right, excellent. So I found this first in Aikido and martial arts. The Japanese are great at this. Went to a Michelin star restaurant the other day with my girlfriend. First time ever, right? She's from a foodie family. They're all chefs. And we thought, you know what? It's a special occasion. We're leaving the UK. Let's go to a Michelin restaurant. I was so impressed. I thought it'd be tasty, but it was more than that. It was someone doing art in your mouth. It was just excellent at a level that it just raised my entire standard for being a human, actually. The pursuit of excellence, you'll always find meaning in. It almost doesn't matter what you do as long as you do it well. Yeah, Green's book of mastery talks about this. Tell you who's great at this, the Japanese. If you want to see a film about this, look at Jiro Dreams of Sushi. It's a Michelin three-star sushi restaurant in Japan. It's a very humble little restaurant. It doesn't have to be posh, right? This guy's in like a subway station, I think, but it's the best. They have this idea of kaizen, continuous improvement in Japanese. And we do this in our courses, right? Like we do a coaching certificate. It's not relevant to most of you, but here's the relevant point. Every year we make it 10% better. There's a German who runs it called Alina. And it actually originally started off being run by another German called Daniela, who was a German black belt martial artist, ex-police woman. Okay. And between her, me and Alina, like every year we're like, let's make it 10% better. And it's getting pretty good now after like 15 years of work. Yeah, raise your fucking standards. Whatever you're doing, raise your standards. You'll find meaning in that. You'll find meaning in excellence. There's a little bit of a trap here. Like guys can be a bit autistic. We can get a bit train spottery. Can actually find a visual of train spotting. So there's a film. We can. What I mean by that is we get obsessive about pointless things. So that's where we've got to be a little bit careful. Does it actually contribute to the world? Does it match our values, make the world a better place? Blokes, as I said, will just obsess about anything. So we've got to be a little bit careful. But more or less, you'll find meaning in the pursuit of excellence, whatever you do. Saying that, talent's a thing. Oh, there's a picture of a teacher. Here's an interesting thing, right? Every time I just do a Google image search and I'm making these. I'm kind of in a hurry usually. So just first picture. So where's the black guy? I thought, what the fuck? Anyone try that? I put in teacher, it's a black guy. Put in parents, black guy, whatever. Anyway, I mean, I have a talent for teaching. The first time I taught, some of you might disagree, but the first time I taught, someone said, done this before. I remember I had like stepped in to teach an Aikido class and I was still a white belt. And they're like, you're really good at this. I thought, oh, thanks. Yeah, listen to that feedback. Listen to what you find easy. Often people miss their talents because they're like, oh, well, it's obvious, right? It's like, no, it's not obvious. Other people can't teach for shit. Now, that comes through my family lineage. It comes through maybe my dharma. There's some sense that I'm a certain caste, right? Like I'm somewhere between a warrior caste and an intellectual caste. I'm not right at the top. I'm not right at the bottom. I've been a gardener, but I was never the best farmer. I run a business, but I'm not the best business person. I'm sort of average because I have to be again, I'm fine with business. I get by, but I'm not. I've got a mate, Alex, who's just fucking good at business, man. Ethical, sharp. Some of that's genetic. I've got friends from certain groups who seem better at that. Let's say Nigerian. There's one. There's others. There's different intelligences, right? So we have certain intelligence. Talent is a thing. This liberal idea that we're all equal and we're all a blank slate is just bollocks. So you might as well go with what you're good at. Yeah. That being said, it takes work. So there's a balance here. Yeah. We want to find purpose. Talent is worth identifying. And people will tell you, right? People have always told me, oh, that's really good. Oh, you really light up when you teach that. Oh, you're really good at teaching that. People fucking tell you if you listen. They tell you with their money, what courses do they buy from you, in my case. And they tell you in their feedback. So this is why comedians, for example, I still teach live. Come and do a workshop with us if you fancy it. Just look up Embodiment Unlimited live workshops. But comedians, for example, will always do live gigs. I do live gigs where I'm now. There's no feedback, right? No in the moment, somatic embodied feedback. That's what I need, not just the comment section. Feel free, but like that's why I love teaching in person. It's the same with a comedian. They'll do before they do their big thing for the YouTube or for Netflix, they'll do a lot of live gigs because that's where you get the feedback. Yeah. This is the idea of diversity sounds good, but it's actually anti-arete excellence. So Western culture is founded on a balance between Christian equality and Greek Roman excellence, arete, which means virtue or excellence. And diversity means everything's good. So how do you have excellence? It's anti-excellence. Yeah. All right. Been talking about service all the way through. So we can't just be good at something. It also needs to be in service. We need to decenter our narcissism, whether that be being a parent, being a carer. I always think of like a good marriage. It's like you're devoted to someone, you're in service to someone, right? It's more than just, they're meeting my needs. It's not just consuming a human as an object. There's a relationality based around mutual service and devotion. This is definitely a way for meaning in the world. Most people I know, for example, will say their kids are not fun, but they do bring meaning. Almost everyone I know who's a parent says that. And my experience of any kind of service is the same, whether it's charity work I've done, work with kids, work with old people, work with disabled people, teaching you fuckers, whatever, it's all service. It decenters oneself, which sounds bad, but is actually the route to happiness. There's a irony there. Yeah. Virtue, the Greek idea, somehow this has been lost in our postmodern world. We say it's all good, everything's all good. Who are you to judge? Virtue's a thing. How you live is the why for many people, right? If you're like, what do I do in my life? I don't know, but how do you want to live? You can live virtuously, and that will give you meaning. Yeah, as opposed to just telling people you have virtue, like changing your Facebook or telling everyone you're a vegan, having certain beliefs. This is the sort of middle class way. It's like, well, actually, I believe in climate change, and or the right wing version. I don't believe that Ukraine is. There's always versions of this, but what do you do? Right? Like, do you actually volunteer? Someone says, "Oh, I believe in the environment." Okay, yeah, but did you clean up the river? Do you drop litter? Right? Like, what do you do? And ultimately, what can you be? Virtue becomes ontological, becomes a being level. So our society is a bit lost because we pretend virtue isn't real, and everyone's virtue signaling while pretending it's not real. So we've fucked this up. Look it up, look up different virtues. Like this is a classic one in terms of the Irish Stoic. Thank you, Irish Stoic. I stole your image off the internet. Yes, anyway. So I've clearly not had the virtue there of not stealing the Irish Stoic's image. If you're out there, let me know if you want a credit. So yeah, courage, classic virtue. I think courage enables all the other virtues. People who aren't brave can't stand up for their own virtues. Justice, wisdom, moderation, such a non-consumer culture virtue. Yeah. Like it sounds old-fashioned, doesn't it? We've made virtue uncool, being moderate, because it doesn't fit with the consumer culture, the money power, the economic system that fucking drives so much, and maybe behind that the devil, who knows? Okay, so virtue, find classical lists. It's pretty cross-cultural. People will say, "Oh, it depends on the culture." Not really. Like Greek and samurai and I don't know, Brahmin virtues are very similar. Mm, Equally, we can talk about sin, right? Seven deadly sins there redone for modern context of social media. Buddhist thing again. Buddhist models of what makes you crazy, the seven sins. We can look at virtue and sin equally. I think it's really worth doing if we're going to find meaning. We need to find this. We need to have a sense of ethics. You need a few things like over the years, I've been part of various groups. I've tried not to start cults by mistake, right? I've tried to be healthy and wholesome. Your own embodied intuition is really important here, that you're not doing a bad thing. When you do a bad thing, you'll feel it. It will physically make you weaker in your body. You'll feel a contraction. Like if right now you imagine, I don't know, taking a little cute bunny rabbit and smashing its head against the wall. You go, ew, you feel the contraction. Yeah. So the embodiment helps. But also we need rules and structures. I have rules in my company. You don't sleep with your students. You don't do business with your students, right? We have structures of accountability, but we also have community. I'll give you an example of that. I don't date my students, right? I've been pretty strict on that over the years. But my current girlfriend was actually an ex-student. And I did check in with my community members, male and female, and say, does this feel okay? Yeah, does this feel okay? And I wasn't a saint about it, but they all went, nah, she's like five, she's an adult. If anything, she's predated upon you. They could just see it was healthy. And so even though it was against the rules, they could go, okay, there was a community accountability. And those people would not be working with me now were I regularly breaking rules or whatever. So all three of these things are good. And I'd say you kind of need two of them in any situation. Ethics is a big topic, but what I would say is the postmodern, there's no right, no wrong. That just doesn't work. If you don't have like 10 commandments or five precepts in Buddhism or something, you're screwed. Yeah. So you don't mean human flourishing. We're talking about meaning. We're not just talking about pleasure. Okay, it's not just happiness. That's the wrong translation, actually. Human flourishing is a much better translation of this Greek word, which is what we're aiming for. Meaning is part of that. Like kids, they're meaningful, but they don't necessarily make you happy in every moment. It's a deeper happiness. So we're looking for flourishing rather than just like, doing meaning with no pleasure. That's not great. Or having a distracted, sweet life. But underneath it, there's this desperation. When you see the middle-aged guys drunk on a Saturday night, they've got that desperation underneath it, right? Partying, singing the songs with their hands in the air, but it don't feel right. You know that it's settling. They haven't really got meaning. Yeah. Woo! Where are we at? Belonging. So we tend to think my purpose, me and mine and my purpose. All right, but we weren't evolved for that. We are tribal creatures. People talk about tribalism like it's bad. We are tribal. We are communal social animals. We're like dogs. We're pack predators. What does that look like? We need a sense of belonging, and it exists in layers. We need family, we need friends, we need community, and we need nation. The extended family, if you're liberal and you can't handle that word. And only then can you say you're an internationalist, even though I speak languages and my girlfriend's Italian and my family's Irish. You can't say you're an internationalist. You've got that. It's nested. Okay. So I say it's not the meaning of your life, it's the meaning of our lives. Yeah, the meaning of our lives, plural, I think is the key thing for human beings. Connection is another way of saying it. Connection with the body, which enables connection with others. It enables the empathy, the resonance, the connection. And connection with the land is another part of this, and connection with theology, with spirit at the heart of all of this. Okay, so there's a lot of meaning. We always say BMI in my company, which is be more Italian, but be more Mediterranean if you prefer. Um, we can learn a lot from the Southern Europeans about this. Like they have dinner together. One question I ask my students is, what percentage of meals do you eat alone? Maybe put that in the chat. It'd be good to know. Well, if it's more than half, I'd be seriously worried. I've lived in African countries where you never ate alone. It was just considered like weird, like a taboo. Always shared food. In Ethiopia, there's a reason for that. It's survival as well as social. How many hugs do you have a day? Again, put the number in the chat. Like we need touch, we need laughter, we need song, we need ritual. Food is just one element of it, right? But there's all these other elements. So, our culture tends to talk about love. Love is the answer. Love is all you need. Sounds good, doesn't it? Fucking boomers. But what kind of love? Eros is romantic love. Sure, that's great. I'm a big fan. Okay. But what about team love, brotherly love? What about agape, which is like spiritual love? Yeah, there's all kinds of love. Yeah, some of them aren't good. Like mania is not always great. Fun love, right? Love for friends, love for family. The love I have for cats is not the same love as I have for my mum or my niece or my partner, right? Totally different. We got to extend this word so it doesn't just mean like love hearts, Valentine's Day. Yeah, don't expect your bird to be God. Okay, like we've tried to replace the village. This is the sense of not just literally, though in Britain it might be, but we've tried to replace the sort of prehistoric Stone Age sense of communality of being held by the 150 people with one person. And that's too much, particularly if you say she now has to make your whole world spiritual. Love is the answer. Well, I'm sorry, but that is way too much to put on your lady. Yeah, you need to put something in the middle of to you, some sense of meaning or spirit that's not you. It's way too much. Hence, divorce rates have gone up. And by the way, the only reason they've sort of gone down a little bit here is because people coming from other countries with more traditional cultures at the end. If that was just like indigenous white people in Britain, it would keep going up. Okay. Brotherly love is really underrated. So Ananda, who's Buddha's friend, talked about this. It's the whole spiritual path, they sometimes say in Buddhism. By the way, if you're stupid but pretty, Ananda's your boy. Look him up. I was thinking about the word bro. It's a good word, brother, right? We think of like Christian brothers, spiritual brothers. I mean it like how black people mean it, which is more spiritual. But yet this word is almost an insult. It's like, oh, he's a bro, he's a gym bro, he's a tech bro. Somehow it's an insult to be brotherly. And places where fraternities are, the people of cultures have made these bad, right? We don't like fraternities. Women are always forcing their way into boys' clubs. The scouts, again, look at the picture. First picture that came up when I said scouts. That was the first picture I was given. Scouts is, women, it's a disaster that girls have kind of come into scouts. Boys need spaces for themselves. Men need spaces for each other. Brotherhood is a really key thing. It's not gay. Okay, totally not gay. Jiu-jitsu is not gay unless you make eye contact. Yeah, for me, I found this living out of the country. Just my friend Meshu, right, in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, your fr male friends will hold hands. They'll feed you at meals. Not a homosexual thing. It's just something that's the connection between people. And I think making all brotherly love gay is a real mistake. Is a real mistake. I think you can be homophilic and homophobic, and both can be a mistake for this. So the healthiness of men just being around each other and getting to know each other in a normal way, we need to bring that back without everyone finding it weird. I started working with young men and same with mentoring, right? And I said, where can I find some young men? And people would look at me like, what? And I'm like, don't worry, I'm not a Catholic priest. What are you talking about? And it was only that I had female friends who knew I had a girlfriend and knew there was nothing weird about me that I was able to talk to young guys. It was mostly like the sons of various mums and things that I knew. But that is sad, huh? It's sad. So where can we find it? I actually have a secret marketing cabal. Men tend to focus brotherhood around meaning and action. So for me, the marketing group that I run is a big one. Sometimes it's around faith. AA groups have a very sort of male sponsorship. Here's another one I put: men fixing cars. This was the first image that came up. There's a woman and a black guy. Men, I said British men fixing cars. That's the image that came up. So weird. So men like to, I know a group of men that do orientate around fixing cars together. Jiu-jitsu, obviously, lots of extreme hugs, lots of positive touch can be really good for men. I put a choir on here just so you know it's not all it doesn't have to be macho. Different men connect in different ways. Choirs are very beautiful co-regulatory thing. It's a way for guys to connect, I think, in a very spiritual way. So it depends on your sort of inclination, your hobbies, things like that. But there's a few. Yeah, mentors, the other big one. I mentioned Sheehan William Smith, who is an Aikido mentor of mine, is very good to me, very much. Very good British man. Very, very grateful to him. It's Paul Linden. Yes, he is Jewish. So all the far right guys, you can go crazy in the chat. I am trans Jewish myself, if you're wondering. That means I'm funny, I'm sarcastic, and I like money. Okay. So yeah, just trans Jewish, not actually Jewish. The whole cutting the end of that, it's not my thing. Okay. So yeah, Paul was very, very good to me. I literally lived in his basement for a while. And if you want a good mentor, here's what you should do: be useful to them. Okay, like with Paul, I used to do his gardening. Other mentors, I painted their houses, I packed their bags, carried their bags, drove them around, folded their hackamers, an Aikido thing. Make yourself useful, because often there's people who are smart and busy. And, I've got a young man from Czechia who I've mentored, and he's just fucking helpful all the time. He's like, how can I help? The whole time, can I make the coffee? Do you want me to set chairs up for the training? So, of course, I take him for lunch and talk to him and mentor him. Yeah. So, there's a skill to that. A lot of what we're really missing that means that men don't have meaning today is initiation. I think I tried to get mine through Aikido and sort of semi-did, and sort of self-initiated finally with the Ukraine work. It's very different before and after, but the black belt stuff was the tribal cultures do this. They take the boys away. There's normally some hardship, some suffering. You'll find some like hippie versions of this. I was on the Sacred Sons podcast. They seem to do good work. I'd say be a bit cautious if it's too therapeutic. I didn't have a good time with the Mankind Project who do this kind of stuff. I think it was well intended, but it was overly therapeutic. I heard good things about Band of Brothers when I lived in Brighton. They were there. They seem to do good work. So I think we do need initiation. And young men often are, there's initiation's a spiritual death. The child dies and the man lives. So when young men are like feeling this nihilism, meaninglessness, it's because they actually do need to die in a way. And that's why you'll see them jumping off cliffs, doing dangerous drugs, driving fast cars, motorbikes. They're seeking a kind of death. Yeah, seeking, and the same with the trans issue. I think they're seeking a kind of death of the body. Um, yeah, and I think one can have a rebirth. I talk a little about this on this podcast I did with Christina, as one of my Ukrainian colleagues. It's a good podcast actually. If you want to check it out, it's not mine, but someone else's. And again, through Aikido, that's one of my Aikido teachers who's definitely been really there for me over the years. A man called Tom Helsby in Brighton. His wife Maria, fine humans. Yeah, I think I couldn't have got married. You're not really fit for women unless you're initiated. And I tried. That's me in Sierra Leone, working with the military there, pretty rough. And I was doing stuff around trauma, not military work myself. People keep thinking I'm a spy. I'm not a spy. Never have been a spy. I'm not as well dressed as James Bond. I don't get laid nearly as much or as well paid or anything else. But I have done stuff in dangerous places. And I think that made me ready for women. Yeah. I'd also think I see a lot of men children around. The meaninglessness of guys getting drunk. I was on the train the other day, and these football fans just really drunk, and they just seem like little kids. I just thought, grow the fuck up. You know, whether it's working class guys with football, middle class guys who collect Harry Potter toys, grow the fuck up. I mean, of course, you can have a hobby, right? Like, you know, Warhammer's great. Years ago, I actually bought a Warhammer army. I celebrated, was into it when I was a kid, and sometimes I like listen to it in the bath. Oh, first picture of man in a bath, by the way. Look at that. Interesting, huh? Again. Anyway, so I listen to sort of science fiction stuff in the bath. Warhammer's like a science fiction. It just gives me a bit of escapism after dealing with Ukraine trauma and, you know, fucking personal growth stuff. And I thought, you know, I'll celebrate. I got some money. I thought I'd get a professional Warhammer army painted. So I did. This is Horace. For those who are 40K fans, say hi in the chat. And I got the army painted. It cost me a bunch of money. My wife wasn't very happy. And I, you know, put it on the shelf kind of thing. And I thought, yeah, I'll learn to play that game again and I'll find some guys to play. 4 years later, I haven't played a game. Now, it's a bit sad. You know, I'm going to have a hobby on a Friday night. It might be quite good for me. Meet some guys, get out of the house. I've just had too many other interesting things to do than play a fucking game, frankly. And I think, you know, if you're playing games and putting, yeah, it could be good for your mental health, relaxation, to have some hobbies, but too much, grow the fuck up. Yeah, maybe let's not kill the elderly here. There's Logan's Run with their rainbow, very Canadian, getting rid of the old people, euthanizing them. Not good, man. Not good. We need that intergenerational wisdom to find meaning. A few memes for you. Let's lighten this up with a few memes. What's the time? I'm so late for lunch. Oh my God. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah. So a few memes for you. Your cats are not your children. This is the meaninglessness. Yeah. Dan Bazarian and all his girls, that's not a flex. Having a healthy family is a flex. This is the community we need to build. Yeah, this sort of trad thing can be a little bit dress up, but I don't think it's dystopian. I think we find meaning in our families and our friends. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. Yeah. I find meaning with my niece and nephew, being loyal to my sister, being loyal to my mum. I find a lot of meaning in that. I make an effort to go see them for a reason. And there's sterilization going on, the sort of end of the family, right? They're kind of transing the kids, the general what's in the water. Yes, they are turning the frogs gay. Fucking hell, who would have thought he was right? It's not actually gay, it's estrogen levels. If you drink normal water in England, you're drinking estrogen from the pill, the chemicals from various plastics. Look it up, man. Look it up. When you try and reduce estrogenetic, is that the word? Testosterone layering chemicals. I made an effort to do this a year or two ago. I spoke to a consultant. It's in so many foods, plastic bottles. I mean, there's a few things you can do without getting paranoid. Use a glass bottle for the gym, you know, certain things around the house, water filters, etc. But without getting paranoid, it's worth looking at. We are being sterilized, whether it's a conspiracy or not. I'll fucking leave it to you. No one's certainly doing anything about it. Maybe people are just too lost to fuck as well, you know. Maybe the truth is that people are just feeling lost, and the doomers just don't breed because they don't believe in the culture. You see this in decadent cultures; the birth rates tend to go down, immigration tends to go up. So let's have a better vision for the future. Some shout out to Ben and my Anglo-futurist mates. Okay, this is just having a better vision for what the nation could look like. Having a non-negative view of the nation. It's like you see like the history of how people view history now. It's like the West is bad. I'm like, compared to who? Like the Aztecs or the Mongols? Were we that bad? I mean, I'm, you know, Irish family, but were the English worse than the Aztecs and the Mongols? Probably not. Japanese, anyone, take your pick. So compared to who's always a good question. Be careful of the revisionist history. You know, I said on Facebook years ago. Oh, excuse me. It's my alarm to come into my body. That's part of something I'll be teaching you guys in a minute. Years ago, I said on Facebook, I said, what's great about Britain? And I was just coming out of being liberal. I was just in recovery. And all my liberal friends went, nothing, slavery, empire, the British Museum, And I went, what about Shakespeare? What about the Beatles? What about our humor? What about, yes, even our food? Yeah, I know it's a stretch. Okay, I'm not going to say dentistry, okay, but at least some of the food. Yeah, it's fucking great food. Have a British roast dinner. Tell me that you don't like that. It's fucking epic. I mean, Japanese friends come in. They're like, roast dinner, excellent. Yeah, it's roast beef. Fucking, yeah, come on. There's plenty good about the country. And we might need a new mythos. Tolkien tried to do this, you know. It's interesting they say death, death when they write. It's because the gods tried to scare people with death. And they said, no, we're not afraid of death. Because our life, the Shire, by the way, Hobbiton, is the West Country where I am right now. Yeah, that is Britain at its best. That's the Cotswolds, if you will. So, I mean, we might need a new mythology around this. And Tolkien's a great place to start. In other countries in Eastern Europe, they have more of this. It's to do with the architecture. I love Slovenia. I'm going to be there soon. I love Poland. Budapest's a beautiful city. Prague, Brno. These are places I love because they understand that the people in the land are one. They understand that we need to live in harmony with nature. That architecture has to represent our traditions and not be fucking ghastly like Birmingham and Crawley and Luton. They understand that beauty and architecture and history are combined. Yeah, so now people are asking, what is a nation? This idea of blood and soil, but that idea of blood and soil has got a really bad name since the mid 20th century Germans took it a bit far, guys, took it a bit farther. But any tribal people, we are the people of the place. That is just totally common sense when I've talked to people in Africa and South America and other tribal peoples I've met. This idea that you're English just because you were born here, was it a pig born in a stable isn't a horse? Yeah. Constantine and trigonometry guys have been questioning this. This is back in the Overton window now. What is it to be British? This ridiculous man arguing with Constantine saying that he would be Japanese if he was born in Japan. No, he fucking wouldn't. Yeah. Having a passport doesn't make you something. I've got Irish genetics and an Irish passport, and I still don't feel really fully Irish, right? I think I'd be a plastic paddy if I tried to claim it. I didn't grow up there, grew up with British culture, so it's a mixture of things. It's complicated, right? But the nation has to be a people. English, British, that is a genetic group. It is complicated because they're half Celtic and I'm fully Celtic genetically, so I'm maybe half British. It's sometimes complicated, but it's not that complicated. Maybe your mum's Japanese, your dad's Nigerian, and you were born in Spain. Doesn't make you a citizen of the world. And we can only be a citizen of the world when we understand that a nation is a group of people. A nation isn't a passport or a place, a group of people in a place. Indigenous, this word has been banned apparently. They tried to sort of say, could we call white British people indigenous in the House of Parliament? And it was voted down by people who weren't indigenous. Interesting. That's what the Home Office looks like now. Is that enough said? I've had foreign students visit me for trainings and they've flown through Heathrow and they've literally picked them up from Heathrow and they've been laughing. They've been like, oh my God, this isn't your country anymore. What the hell? Um, are Luton, Birmingham, Bradford, these the best places in the UK? This is places you'd want to live? I wouldn't want to live there. Okay. I wouldn't want to live there. Maybe they'll become excellent in the future. Who knows? Certainly not now. Yeah, this is a major fucking issue, guys. This is a major issue. We don't have to be awful to anyone. We don't have to become racist. We don't have to be terrorizing anyone doing anything illegal. I'll be clear about that. But this is a major fucking issue. Yeah, by the way, they always say his real name was fucking Legend. Okay, this is his real name. The anyone who has this idea of nationhood, of an indigenous people, anyone who can lead the working class who have never voted for it, it's totally undemocratic. The working class would always have voted against mass migration. Every survey ever done since the 50s has voted against it, but there's never been a democratic mandate for it. Anyone who leads that will be singled out by the money power that wants mass migration. And this is a real problem for meaning because tribe is a big thing for meaning. Free Tommy. Okay. By the way, this was me Googling British family. This is what came up. This is what came up. Every advert on TV. Next time you're at the cinema, just see if you can see an indigenous couple or family on an advert. See how many seconds it takes for every advert. It's pretty weird. There's one top right, but pretty weird that this is being shown as the norm. All right. So equally, by the way, in terms of Google, Google stupid person. I Google stupid person, and of the first, there's 15 answers. I looked at the page, first 15 answers. Most of them were men, 15 out of 13 out of 15, and all of them were white. What we paint a picture of matters, guys. What we paint a picture of matters. Do not tolerate this anymore. Okay. I have a question actually. How would we connect if land is a part of this? What is it like to be connected to land? I spoke to a Sikh taxi driver. I always like the Sikhs when I meet Sikhs. Always had a good experience. My dad said the same thing. And this guy was saying, oh, I love the British countryside. And every weekend I drive around. And that's quite unusual, I've noticed. I was once in a taxi from Leeds and it was a British Muslim guy. A Muslim guy, I'll say, really. And I had to drive to was it Ilkley, somewhere in the countryside, and you could see him get more and more uncomfortable as we came out of the city. You could see he wasn't connected to the land. And I think if we are going to have migration, we do need to connect people to the land. I think that's not an easy thing to do. It might take generations, but it is possible if there's a real intent there. And if there's no real intent, why not? Strange, huh? Yeah, so nature is a big part of how we find meaning. I dare you to take a week in the Lake District or the Peak District, North Yorkshire Moors, North Norfolk, and not come away with a stronger sense of meaning if you're not on your phone the whole time. Nature connects us to meaning. You might need to fuck right off into nature. A solo meditation retreat or a nature hike. Obviously, be safe. Don't be numb. But this can be so helpful. Yeah, usually on your own to find meaning. I've spent a week on my own in the woods once, and you come out of it with a different sense of yourself and what you're here for. Let's talk about tradition. So this is, something we need for meaning. The idea that we can be lone individuals without traditions. We might not know why we love a British phone box or why we're doing Pancake Day, but tradition is part of meaning for all human beings. Roger Scruton writes beautifully about this. There's a bunch of YouTube channels that talk about this. Let's not infight, guys. People know the Lotus Eaters. There's a bunch of other good ones on there, around different traditions. English Way, Richard the Fourth, I've mentioned. Yeah, let's stop fighting each other, slagging each other. If not everyone is controlled opposition and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of good people talking about tradition out there, and we should support each other. Yeah, there's a couple of good quotes while I'm sipping on my coffee. Yeah, everyone's conservative when it comes to their bodily organs, right? No one would think, "Oh, just take an organ out." Won't need that. I mean, unless it's your appendix and you're in luck, it's not going to be it's going to be a problem. So we're all conservative about what we know best and what's closest to us. And this is, I think, part of meaning that's now lost in our sort of, I was just listening to this podcast of these American men's workers, God love them, and they're so individualistic. They were saying, you can just invent a tradition, someone made something up. So no. Tradition is not just made up, it evolves over time. It's tried and tested. That's the point. Creativity is a big part of meaning for a lot of people. What, like the books I write, the videos I make, for me, what I want to leave behind, part of it is that act of creation. And again, you need to be not in a fight, flight, trauma state for that to get into that creative mode. There's a sort of Maslow hierarchy of needs where you might need to make some money, have a roof over your head before you can be really creative. In terms of the body, I think it's an aesthetic thing. It's totally, you've got to be careful. This doesn't become a substitute for meaning, not excessively relying on aesthetics, but I work out. There's nothing wrong with a bit of aesthetics and it can help with your confidence. We need a dojo, right? I think the gym is a modern dojo, just like the gymnasia was. People on the jiu-jitsu mat talking philosophy after class. People in the gym, seeing the gym as a place of transformation. That's what dojo means, a place of the way. One more view of purpose here is that if none of this works for you, you're just trying to find deep flow. It's like a Taoist view. This is not the surface flow of, I'll go with the flow, man, smoke some weed. I don't really feel like doing that, so I'll break my word. It's not that. It's a deep flow. That's what I felt in Cyprus and Ukraine, the deep flow, like the book that I wrote, that I meant to do this. That is something we can tune into. And the sort of Norse version of this, the Vikings had this idea of follow your weird. Brian Bates, who's my mate's dad, hey Paul, wrote a book on this, that you follow your weird, you follow that which is some element of choice and some element of fate. It's not quite kismet, like the Arabs would say. It's not quite fate. It's some element of choice, but it's often strange. It's my weird to end up in Ukraine teaching there, or whatever, right? There's a weirdness to when you really go with the deep flow that I love. I love this concept. Yeah, another concept we can look at here for meaning is you create meaning. So you become das Übermensch. Nietzsche's idea is we create values. I'd say sort of out of what is a bit of a question, but the idea that we can create meaning, we can be active in that. Let me give you a modern example of that. This chap from Hollywood just goes against the flow of Hollywood. The Buddhists call it going against the stream. That's the Buddhist notion, not going with the flow, going against the stream. I like him a lot. And he's just said, you know what, I'm not going to do sex scenes with anyone that's not my wife. I'm not going to be involved in unwholesome films and unwholesome messages. I like this guy. And I've totally forgotten his name. Anyway, put it in the chat. Yeah, so there's a sort of existential, more European view of purpose rather than that, God has a plan for you. We can choose purpose. We can choose meaning. I think there is something in that. It's very Camus. The opposite of that is also good. Often you have these contradictions and you take whatever's useful, guys. I'm just giving you everything. This is a Walsh dump. I'm dumping on you right now. It's everything I know from fucking 25, 30 years of study. Let's take the Bhagavad Gita. Shout out to my Hindu bros. The guy's on the chariot, right? It's a civil war. And he looks at his family are there. He's like, I'm gonna have to kill people. It's my family. It's no good. It's shitty. I don't want to be involved in this civil war. And obviously, this is relevant to us today. And luckily, his chariot driver is Krishna, right? He's fucking blue as shit. And Krishna's like, mate, you just got to do it. Accept your fate. This is your karma. This is your dharma. This is what you're here for. Crack on. And he says, long story short, Bhagavad Gita in fucking 1 minute. He says, all right, mate. And he cracks on. So it's something about accepting what you are given. Like, I am a teacher. And also, here's another thing. I divide opinion on. I'm just kind of annoying to some people. And I always tried to be nice. I tried to communicate better. And eventually, I was on a silent meditation retreat, right, in America, in the snow, in the Colorado mountains. And people complained about me. I was like, I've done literally nothing. I've said nothing. I've not touched anyone. I've done nothing. And I still annoyed people. And I went, you know what? I'm a fucking troll. Some people are just going to be annoyed by me. I surrendered to that fate I'd been given, to my dharma. And Islam's good on this. I'm not a big fan of Islam in many ways. Watch my video on those four forces controlling the world, but it's good on this. People have surrendered to the will of God, and that as a sort of narcissistic, I'm the boss of me modern, particularly if you're Americanized, is really hard. And sometimes that is how we find our purpose, is we just fucking accept it. Yeah. Yeah, another version of that is like you know that life is meaningless and it's ridiculous and absurd, but you choose to play with it. This is the Rick and Morty answer. This is a Jim Carrey answer, another guy from Hollywood I like and respect. You say, this is ridiculous. I'm a Hollywood star. This whole thing's corrupt. Nothing means anything, but fuck it, let's play. Yeah, and I think that is a solid answer as a way out of nihilism, if nothing else. The absurdist answer. And another version, the Zen answer is just to go, you know what, nothing means anything, but let's stare at the wall. Let's be present. The answer is not to make meaning cognitive, it's just to show up, right? This is the Eckhart Tolle. This is the Zen master. I love fucking Zen. Zen's so fucking cool. I've done quite a bit of Zen over the years, and in the end, it was almost too militaristic for me. It was too much. It was too intense. But I love that raw, stripped, and there's humor in that. Being totally present. It's like improv comedy, totally present to right now. Like you awake right now. The meaning of your life is right fucking now. So wake up, right? Like, oh, I'm in the background doing the washing up. I'm listening to Mark go blah, blah, blah for 2 fucking hours while his girlfriend waits to have lunch. Right now. This is it. This is your life, and it's ending 1 fucking second at a time. Yeah. Pick a verb. So I've given you many perspectives. This is 25 years of study. Do we find purpose? Do we find meaning? Or do we tune into it? Or are we does Ubermensch? We make it, we create it, we existentially choose it, or do we surrender to it? Pick a word. Pick one of them. Okay. Now pick again, dipshit, because here's what people do. They pick the wrong one. Yeah. So pick the one which is not your habit. If you're like, yeah, I'm the boss of me, you might need to surrender, not choose. Yeah. And equally, if you're sort of, if you're the opposite way around, if you're like totally yin, surrendered, bad boundaries, you might need to get a little bit more fucking Nietzschean about this shit. Yeah. Don't make me get Nietzschean on your ass with my mustache. Let's not go there. Okay. Another version of this. It's just growth, not financial growth, not the hippie growth, which is usually just about getting high. We develop. You can look at spiral dynamics, Robert Keegan, Suzanne Greuter. There's a whole department of adult development at Harvard. We grow. Maybe the meaning of life is just life, right? This is sort of very evolutionary if it's all too spiritual for you. Is an oak better than an acorn? Well, yeah, because it's more developed, right? Like you're an acorn that wants to become an oak. If I didn't write my book or do my project in Ukraine or, start my company, that would have been less of an oak. I've grown and expanded from what was possible. The idea of possibility is sacred in Western culture. Yeah, so when a child dies, it's sadder than when an adult dies or an old person dies. Not in all cultures, but in Western culture, we say that's sad because the child had possibility. The child hadn't lived. Yeah, whereas the old person, it's sad, but it's not tragic because they've lived their life. They've become the oak. So this is what I really try and help my mentees with is their possibility, their potential, which won't look like mine, right? Not everything's a fucking acorn and oak. Some things are, I don't know, a birch seed and a birch tree. Does that work? Yeah, that works. Yeah. Does it make sense? Some things are a fucking swan egg and a swan. Totally different. Different armor, different growth, but let us become what we could be. It's as simple as that, and that is not abstract. There's an evolutionary sense to that. There's a potential to be fulfilled. I love this cartoon. Read this cartoon. Love this cartoon. Okay, so maybe one meaning of life is just life itself. Okay, so this is not a fuck off because think about this. Pagans like life. Evolutionary Nietzscheans like life. Christians are pro-life. Yeah, hopefully. Okay. Buddhists don't like to kill things. We're all pro-life. So what, like when I said this death cults, look at that video, Running the World. That word death is really important because it's anti-life. And a lot of meaning comes from being pro-life in the bigger sense. Babies, yes, definitely fucking babies. Please stop killing babies. But also old people, please stop euthanizing people. Also being, against war unless it's absolutely necessary for self-defense. Be pro-life. Yeah, lots of ways into this. Take your fucking pick, guys. All right. I'm not here to tell you the specifics. And this is a feature of postmodernism, and metamodernism is what comes next, which is the frame I'm trying to teach from, which is not that I can tell you one way. Yeah, it's not follow the Welsh cult. And that would be simple, it would be easier, right? Like, Mark, it's taken 2 fucking hours. You're late for lunch. Bit worried about her downstairs now. Anyway, but the key thing is you have to find your own way. But I hope I've given you some principles here. There are also technologies of connection, whether that be psychedelics, yoga, martial arts, fasting, reading the Bible, spending time in nature. That you don't have to just think your way through this. There are technologies to connect to the divine, to source, to spirit. I do that every single day. Today I've been in the church, I've meditated, I've spent time in nature, and I've gone to the gym. All four of those gave me a connection. Yeah. Loads of other thinkers on this. If you do want to get theoretical, McGilchrist there, some British thinkers there. Roger Scruton, deceased now, sadly. Some really good ones. Bang Chulhan, if you need to know any of the names, I can't fucking say half of them, but there's some good ones out there. And we're not talking about regression. It's not the sort of feminist fear that we're going to be, what's that dumbass feminist fantasy where the men dominate all the women sexually because that's what they kind of want deep down. It's not that. It's not the Taliban or ISIS, right? I think we can be integral. What does space church look like? What does Anglo-futurism look like? What is Christianity 3.0, the second Reformation maybe? Yeah, what is the Vatican 3? What do we need to go update? Yeah, otherwise we're just LARPing, right? It's like I've got hippie mates who pretend to be pagans, and sadly some Christian mates who I think really can't in their souls really believe that Moses parted the Red Seas or the Virgin Mary was really a virgin in any sense other than symbolically. They can't really believe it. So they're just LARPing. They're just playing dress up at this point. I mean, if you can, great. There's solid traditions, there's things you can convert to. No, Putin isn't your friend. He is not your Orthodox friend. But there are, I've got great Orthodox friends who are really sincere about that. Great Catholic friends. There's some really fun YouTube channels. Check these guys out on that. So there are sincere people trying to sort of bring it up to speed with the mythos and the psychology of the modern world. Some who are trying to go back, I think, which is beautiful in a different way. And maybe there's a place for tradition, but is it going to work on a 25-year-old who's got a modern mind? Maybe not. Maybe not. So we need to be intricative or meta modern. Yeah, so this is spiritual, not secular. We're not in the desert of secularity. We're not materialistic, but it's pluralistic. What this means is it's not one true way. It's not jihad. Everyone is got to be one thing. It doesn't really work in a world that's got as much information as we have, as much variety. Even a post multicultural world. Even if everyone in England suddenly became British tomorrow, may it be so. That's just impossible. It's not going to happen. Cat's out of the bag. I've studied Buddhism now. Cat's out of the bag. I can't be the kind of Catholic my mum was. Yeah. All right. That is a lot of fucking talk. If you throb club, if you've made it this far, guys, in the fucking chat. Key thing though, you haven't made it to the end. This is the most important part. I'm fucking tired too, guys. It's been a long fucking video, but it's the most important part. To action. What are you gonna do? It's not enough. You can't think your way out of it. Shelf help. That's all books are. Shelf help, not self help. Go to the gym for concentration, body awareness, discipline. Really basic place to start. If you're like, I don't know where to start there. I remember start with your physiology. Some young guys I've mentored and they've come so far. Their fucking mums love it, by the way. Their mums are like, keep taking them. Take some guys to the gym if you're older. This is a great place to start. Okay, it builds real virtues. It's fucking easy as well. Yeah. It's not a new idea that we train youth in martial arts. We train them in, manliness, physicality. It's always been a place to start. And things come from there, kids start eating right, like Mike Israel teaches you something about the gym and Huberman teaches something about neuroscience and it spreads. You start getting more scientific. You're saying, well, Mike, how many reps should I do? You have to think about first principles. You start eating better. You start sleeping better because that's where you recover, right? Mike Mensa tells you don't recover in the gym. Stress goes down, everything gets better. Okay, so there's your place to start. But now let me give you a daily schedule. It's a daily schedule. So if you're serious about this, this is 1 hour of work that you should do for 90 days. 90 days is how long it takes you to recover from a drug addiction, and you are addicted to fucking modernity and post-modernity if you've watched this far. Okay, I would commit to this, maybe with a friend, send them the video, say, let's commit to this. This is taken from our certificate of embodiment coaching. I'm not selling you that. You probably don't want to be an embodiment coach, but we've tried and tested this over the years. This is even a busy person can do this. Here's how it works. Every morning, 10 minutes meditation and prayer. Pick one, stick with it. Body-based meditation, nothing new age, or some kind of Christian prayer if you're into that, or whatever your religion is. Nature walk, get in nature, headphones off, no podcasts, listen to the sounds of the water, the wind, the birds, whatever you've got near you, park, nature, sea, whatever. 20 minutes. Okay, just that would change your life. In the day, set an alarm like the one that went off for me earlier. Okay, I have 7 in a day because I sometimes miss 2. 5 times 1 minute. Check in with yourself and then do that bridges centering. Go back to the beginning of the video. You'll see that video, tetrarchy centering. Okay, or just a quick ABC centering. Google that, put it in YouTube. I've got lots of them online for free. It's going to cost you nothing, by the way, this. 1 minute a day. Check in with your body, come back to your body. That's your anchor for finding purpose, and center so you reduce the stress that's telling you you don't have time for purpose. 10 minutes talking to a friend every day about this. Okay, find a buddy, find a friend. It's online. You can do it with reflection yourself, but it's much better to find a friend on the phone, via text, however you want. And 10 minutes like learning, reading books, listening to my stuff, Mark Manson, Jordan Peterson, Viveki, whatever takes your fancy. 10 minutes a day, you'll watch a load of videos. Yeah, a bunch of videos, ebooks, some of the ones I recommended earlier. Evening, reflect on purpose. When was I most on purpose today? Maybe your whole day was shitty, but there's that one thing you go, you know what, I actually really kind of enjoyed teaching that guy the thing at work. Or, I really enjoyed it when I taught the kids that thing. Or, I really enjoyed it when I did that creative thing, even though I'm an accountant, right? So you look for that bright spot. That's the key thing. When were you most and least on purpose? How did you do today? You're accountable to yourself. 10 minutes journaling. And just because it fucking motivates you, helps you deal with life. Purpose can be like, I'm not on purpose. It can be a bit stressful. What are you grateful for? I've got so much to be grateful for. And that really helps me find what I haven't got yet. It gives you the energy for what you haven't got there. That's 1 hour a day. Do that 5 or 6 days a week. You can have a day off if you want. Even fucking God got a day off. Don't do it less than 4 days. 4 days is the minimum. I recommend 5 or 6. Okay. Every weekday is good. Saturday if you want. Sunday, take a day off. It's 1 hour. Okay. So we're looking at 5 or 6 hours a week. Do that for 90 days. I can pretty much guarantee you will find more meaning in your life. You will find some purpose in your life. Like I would bet, I will let Mark Manson shag me in the butt if this doesn't fucking work for you. Okay, guys, I will, I will. No, I won't say that about Jordan Peterson's daughter. It's not nice. Okay, so this will fucking work. This will fucking work. All right. You might have to change your friends. If all your friends get drunk, if all your friends are losers, unfortunately, you might need to let your friends go. Paul Mosey talks about this, and it is a fact. Sometimes you can take your friends with you, sometimes you can't. All right. Sorry about that, guys. It's just a hard truth. Stop complaining. Just give up all complaining. Go back into agency mode. Yes, I know the world's hard. Yes, I know it's not fair. Yes, I know there's woke people everywhere. There's Muslims taking every town, blah, blah. That's all true. Stop fucking complaining for the 90 days. That's the key thing. If you want to go more hardcore at the end of the 90 days, you could do one of these for a week. Okay, solo nature retreat, if you can do that. I know not everyone can. A men's initiation, if you can find one. Again, I know not everyone can. That's why there's options. Give up all entertainment for the last week. That everyone can do. That will cost you nothing. It will give you time. Spend a day with a friend. What are you here for? What are you here for? What's the point in you? Why do you exist? Spend the whole fucking day doing that. After you spend 1 day on that, you will know your purpose. You'll be much closer. Psychedelics, you can do that completely legally. Obviously, in the Netherlands, there's guided tripping stuff there, or in various other countries. I couldn't possibly recommend you anything legal. And that is not for everyone. If you've got a lot of mental ill health in your family, give it a miss, guys. Not for everyone. Do get proper advice on that. Same with fasting. You can do an extended 3 to 5 day fast. I wouldn't recommend longer than that, but that might well be enough to sort of take this to the next level at the end of that 90 days. So that's the commitment. Don't complain to me if you watch this video and you say, oh, I didn't do anything 90 days. That's the commitment. And if you're like, what's the point in my life? What else have you got to do? Yeah. Okay, we've got a podcast if you like that. I've got a book for young men on this. It's way more radical than things I can say, way ruder, way more radical than things I can say on YouTube. Contact me through X if you want an advanced copy of that book. We'll release some of it here on YouTube, I think, in the future. I do retreats. If you go to embodimentunlimited.com, you can do a retreat with us in Slovenia. Absolutely beautiful, looking at meaning, looking at trauma, looking at all these things I've talked about, embodiment. Usually small groups, beautiful places, not super expensive. If you can get to Ljubljana or Slovenia, different places, they're well worth it. I'm moving there because it's such a nice country, and frankly, the UK is going down the toilet. So thanks for all the fish. I think we can move to goodness, truth, and beauty again. I want to end positively. I think like that is totally possible in this life. If you've made it this far, you are part of Throb Club. You know what to do. Put it in the chat. Fucking, this one's been epic. So well done. Like, I can't believe anyone listens to me this much, but maybe on this topic, I know my stuff. I've got another one, STI Club. It's a new one. Okay. So I want you to spread this. We have a lot of older men who watch this channel. I want more young men to get this message, like 25 to 35. Think right now of a young guy, 25 to 35, who's not super woke, who will like this, socially transmit it to them. Okay. Send them the link. That would do me a favor, and it will do them someone who will be like, thank you, kind uncle, thank you, cool brother, thank you, colleague at work, who will this will change someone's life. This will change someone's life. So do that's called SDI Club. Put SDI Club in the chat if you're in. There's young guys out there who need a better influence than fucking Andrew Tate. And I don't know about me personally, but certainly the work I've presented here, I think is pretty solid. I don't delete any comments, though YouTube is. I try and respond to every comment, though it's getting difficult as the channel gets more popular. Contact me on X there if you want to get in touch. Personally, I will respond to messages if they're brief. And that is it. Boom. I need like a thing to say at the end, like Wargoff says, catch you later, folks. Fucking, I don't know. Get out of here. What do you want? What do you want? Catchphrase. Tell me what to say in the chat. This is bollocks. I'm so tired and fucking hungry. Layers.